What's up, and welcome back to another episode of Very Vehicular, brought to you by Vyper Industrial. And as always, I'm your host, Brian Scotto. Today we have TJ Hunt, and he came to win. Yeah, that's right. We set the record for the longest Very Vehicular podcast ever. And he kind of turned the table on me and asked me a bunch of hard questions. We get into the business of this thing that we do. Also get into a little bit of a therapy session together. And lastly, we talk about cars. Yeah, we did talk about cars as well. Anyway, like I said, this is going to be a long one. I'd go grab a snack. Everybody knows wearing sunglasses at night is for douchebags. Fortunately, Heatwave Visual also makes apparel. They've got great designs on everything from hats, hoodies, t-shirts, and even socks. But what they really kill at is their collabs. For example, they have an ongoing series with Chevy that includes the Heartbeat of America shirt I'm wearing now, plus a rad series with Chevy trucks. They've also worked with my friends at Eisenhower Racing, and who knows, maybe one day there'll be a Scotto edition. And if you want to see that happen, head on over to their Instagram at Heatwave Visual and get to pestering them. Thanks. What's that old saying? Don't ever meet your heroes. Unfortunately, this applies to cars too, as my buddy Ken Block discovered when he bought his Ford RS200. To say it politely, the suspension sucked. So we went to KW to fix it on their 7-post suspension rig. Some say it was misappropriated in the middle of the night from an F1 team, and it once knocked out the power grid of a small village. But what we do know for certain is that this machine allows KW to create any test conditions needed to best develop their suspension across the entire product line. Go check out kwsuspension.com and get yourself a kit developed on this insane 7-post technological torture device. I mean, suspension rig. All right, TJ, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, man. First off, this wasn't going to be the first thing, but like, can you talk about what you drove here? Or are you like giving stuff away?
No. It's a 2013 Vantage V8 4.7 manual.
I love that car. It's like so slept on.
So I just released a video like probably like 36 hours ago.
Okay.
That is like this big breakdown of this is such a great car. No one's paying attention to them at all. And like, I don't blame anybody because I was very much the same way. I would look at a Vantage and like, I had this weird assumption. I feel everyone is like kind of on the same page that they're just unreliable and like not
they're
cool.
British. Yeah,
they're British. So like you just go, like there's a reason why they're like 100,000. I mean, I bought the car for 50 grand, which was a steal, but the original MSRP on my car was 140.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, there's got to be something that's just shit. Can I say that?
Yeah, you can say whatever.
Okay, it's just it's shit. Like there has to be. It's not like a 911. You know what I'm saying? And I saw it on Facebook Marketplace, and I'm like addicted to Marketplace. Like it's
same here, buddy.
Yeah. So and I just saw it, and like I lowballed the guy after like 3 months. He was asking 65, which was like pretty fair, and I got him down to 50.
Yeah.
And I've had it for like 3 weeks. It's so good.
So I was a journalist when that car first came out, and I remember when I drove it, I think I made the argument that like you should buy this instead of a 911. I don't know if I still feel that way, but at the time, like, you know, the 911 is the gold standard, and it sounds really good. It drives really great. Like everything about it's great. And I spent like 3 weeks with it in San Francisco, like up to Mount Tam, like just doing everything from like sitting in traffic on the Golden Gate to like driving amazing roads to just doing city stuff. Like it did all of it great.
I don't think in the time that it came out, I would buy it over a 997 because if you like compare it, like that car was 130, 140, my specific one when it came out. And that was more than a GT3.
Yeah.
So it's like I would absolutely much rather have a GT3 over that car. But in today's market value, that car being at like a 60 to 65, I'd rather own that than a C2S.
Yeah.
Might not be better than a C2S in certain ways, but it does a lot of things better than a 911 C2S, in my opinion.
And I also just like it because the 911 has kind of become like ubiquitous in like the performance car culture. It's like it's everywhere, and you just don't see that car as much. It looks really good.
It looks amazing.
Because I was kind of playing the game of like, oh, I wonder what you'll drive here today.
Yeah,
it's like I don't text guests because I kind of want to be surprised. I'm like, oh, will it be? And like when I kind of heard the car, but I didn't hear it from that far away. I was like, oh, I figured I'd hear you from like half a block away.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, you got that. Really nice.
Yeah. I always like play a game. I'm like, okay, where am I going? I play like the odds of like, okay, if I bring this car, am I going to get hassled by CHP? Or it's like leaving, like San Diego's like pretty good. Of like, if you're not being a shithead.
Yeah.
I always tell people like, if you're not excessively speeding, if you're not just being an asshole, generally like.
Or if your car's not too loud.
But even that, like, if you're trying to be respectable about it, like, I've been pretty okay.
Yeah, we just had this conversation in the last pod with me, Vin, and Ron, that as much as people talk about California being like the worst place to own a car, it's still the best car culture. And surprisingly, like, as long as you're like kind of respectful, like, you usually can kind of get away with it.
I mean, I've been pulled over more times than I can count and have been let off, and it's been in like anything you could name. And they're usually like, really cool car, I just didn't know what it was, or like the plate looked weird,
right?
So I wanted to check it. Like, despite anything that the car may or may not have on it, they're like, like you're good.
Have you had cops pull you over and like be straight honest with you that they just pulled you over to look at the car?
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
It's sometimes that, sometimes it's like, oh, I've seen you on YouTube, I pulled you over, and I could say I pulled you over because of a tint or this or that, but like, can I get a photo, and can I take a photo of the car?
I haven't had that. That's sick.
Yeah. I filmed it on a vlog one time. I was in like my Mark V Super, like right when it came out. And we did the Street Hunter wide body kit on it, and like some of my friends like pranked me, and like I went to get it in to get painted, and they painted it orange and put a Fast and Furious livery on it. And I was like,
I remember that.
That is so brutal, you guys. But when I drove that, an officer pulled me over just to see it and was like, this is really cool, can I get a photo? And I was like, yeah, just let me go, and you can do whatever you want.
The greatest moment for me on that, it was like 2005. Ford had just launched the Ford GT.
Yeah.
And I got a press loaner. They were letting all of the press drive it for 1 hour. Something happened, and the guy who was, this dude Octavio, who was running the press cars at the time, said to me, he's like, hey, I can't get there, but like just have the car back by night. So I'm like a 25-year-old kid with a Ford GT, the keys to Ford GT, and 12 hours with it. I think I ran like 4 tanks of gas through it.
That's sick.
Because the thing gets like 4 miles to the gallon. But I was on the FDR Drive in New York City trying to get out of the city. Because like the number one thing you have to do is like, okay, I have to get out of New York to go drive this thing
100%,
and open it up.
100%.
And like the FDR is bumper to bumper traffic, and the cars are rolling. Cars are like, rolling forward, and I'm letting traffic roll out. So I can just do like first gear pulls. I do it once, do it twice, and then all of a sudden I see the cherries behind me, and I'm like, oh. And the cop pulls up next to me. He's like, is that the Ford GT? And I was like, yeah. He's like, how do you have that? I was like, oh, it's a press car. He's like, hold on a second. And he like threw it in like New York. They used to have these cop lights that would like lift up so that you could like see them further.
Yeah.
And he like lifts up the lights and just shuts the road down. He's like, all right, let him go a bit. All right, now you can do. Now you can get. He's like, now you can get. He's like, now you can get in the second.
See,
gear.
if you had a camera for YouTube,
it was 2005. I actually did have a camera with us, but like, I don't know, we didn't film that because I was like so nervous when the cop first pulled up.
Oh, for sure, for sure. So,
kind of a different thing.
Fun fact: I was in one of the original Ford GT commercials.
Wait, what?
Yep.
Okay, you gotta tell me this because you were like 10.
I was 7 or 8, 9, 10, around that. Yeah. Oh, I was 10. Yeah, I was 10.
You're what, early 30s now?
Yeah, I'm 30. 31.
Okay.
31. I played hockey my whole entire life.
Yep.
Played for 19 years. I traveled on the road so Southern California has a massive hockey culture. Believe it or not, people don't really realize that. They think San Diego or LA, LA. But I played my whole entire life in.
I know like Mickey's like a huge hockey guy.
Yeah, but he came from Ohio, it's more east. But the hockey culture in San Diego or in LA is huge. But
I mean, it was the Kings and and all that. That's more my era. But
yeah. But I was the team I was on in the area. They were doing our coach was like, they're shooting a Ford GT commercial in San Diego for Phil Mickelson, and the whole premise of the commercial was, what will Phil do next?
Okay.
And they got Wayne Gretzky involved. So it was Phil Mickelson, Wayne Gretzky, and essentially it was Phil was quitting golf and was going to do his next professional sport, and he wanted to play hockey.
Yeah.
So he dressed up as a goalie, and we went down to the Croc Center ice rink and did a full day of just like our whole team. They took like 4 or 5 of us to go and shoot on Phil Mickelson and like have like the young kids just like dust on him and everything go in the net. And Wayne was there. Phil was there. They had a Ford GT there, and then at the end of it, he goes, well, I think I'll just keep, maybe I won't do hockey, but I'm going to get the new Ford GT. And it was really sick commercial. I still have it somewhere in my archives, but
yeah, you're going to have to get that for us.
Yeah, that was really cool.
All right, so before we took a little bit of a detour on how rad the Vantage V8 is, the thing I wanted to actually kind of start on as a topic is, and I'm sure you think about this, but like, you were kind of one of the pioneers for like what is the modern like vlog build, right? Like you were doing it early on when no one was doing it. And now it's like probably one of the most saturated markets in YouTube, right? So like there's a lot of other people who've done other types of content. When we were at Hoonigan, we kind of did a bit of everything, but we didn't even start with the build stuff. But for you, that was the thing that you were doing early on. And you did sort of that original model of, I'm learning this as I go. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm not a mechanic. I'm not a specialist. I'm like a young kid who's figuring this out.
Yeah.
I'm going to make mistakes along the way. And that was like a entirely new space. Like no one else was really doing that. I would say probably the closest was like Mighty Car Mods was doing it.
They were a big inspiration too.
Yeah. So like, I mean, one, like why choose to get into that and kind of go do that? But I think to bring it more present day, like what is sort of like, how do you see everyone else who's doing it now? Because like I have people who ask me all the time, like, oh, I want to start a YouTube channel. I'm like, I don't know if you should. Right? Like you were there early doing one particular model, and you have obviously done very well and perfected it. But.
Yes, I think there's a couple like ways to attack this situation, but to kind of tackle what you said last, I don't think you should do it. I think that a lot of people today do it for every single wrong reason. I was just talking to someone about this, and he's like, I'm starting this channel, blah, 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 or I want to do this, which like I always love like getting into like, not like debates with people, but just like respectfully shitting on them as quickly as possible, because they're like,
I like that.
They're like, I'm trying to do this thing. I'm trying to do this YouTube thing. And like, I'll be like, cool. How many videos have you done? 90% of the time, the answer is 0. And I'm like, okay, then why are you even asking me this question? You haven't even started. But they'll be like, well, I filmed 3. And I'm like, okay, over how long have you posted? And he's like, and I'm not speaking of anyone in particular, but this is just like the general consensus. He'll be like, I've uploaded 3 videos in the last 3 months. I'm like, cool, still nowhere. Like you need to upload at least 100 videos minimum that year before you could even like try to talk and ask a question, because like you can't answer anything I'll ask you. Like there's no data, you have nothing to go off of. And then secondly, I always ask people, I'm like, well, what's your goal? And they're like, well, I really like, I loved how you've done this, and like, I want to start this thing, and I want to be able to buy this thing. I'm like, cool, you're already starting with an expectation of a result, and like, you've already lost the plot. Like, if you have an expectation of a result, this is not the game for you. And when I started, I never had when I first started, there was no expectation of a result. I just did it because I truly wanted to do it. And that's usually my premise. And I'm like, if you could do YouTube just because you gave a fuck about it, period, then you'll be successful. But if you go into it like, oh, I want to be like X, Y, and Z, then I'm like, you kind of already lost. Because everything that you do is not necessarily like ingenuine, but like you're doing it for a reason and a purpose, because you're telling yourself there is a certain payoff or cutoff. And if you don't see yourself making that between whatever estimated timeline you've given yourself, you're already lost. You know what I mean?
Do you, or when you first started doing this, and I know you did paintball stuff before, but when you first started doing the car content, Why did you want to make it?
Because so at the time, like when I started YouTube, it was like YouTube was 3 years old, 3 or 4 years old. Like I remember watching,
at least in like the modern version of it.
Yeah, like what YouTube was. I remember watching YouTube when I was like really addicted to YouTube. It was like 2007. I was in 7th grade and I was watching YouTube videos. And at that point, it was like YouTube was very much like of its original motto, which was broadcast yourself. There were no brands. There were no like Hoonigans, which we'll get into because I used to like kind of fucking hate that. It's like Hoonigan existed. And I'm like, this is not what YouTube is for. You guys are a show. YouTube is for individuals, but like we'll get into that.
We can get into it.
And you know, throughout high school, I never really watched too much TV, but I was watching a lot of vlogging. Like one of my original channels I used to watch was called BF vs. GF. It was this guy, Jesse and Gina. They're like the original OG couple. They're like a couple, and they vlogged every single day about nothing. Just like they lived in Philly, they would travel, they would do things. And there was like the Casey Neistat era and all that stuff. But like before that, that's the content that I digested. Like, rather than watching TV, I was watching their daily uploads. And I was like, man, I fucking know these two individuals. Right. So I very much became in love with that. And then when I started to get when I was getting closer to getting my license and I was 16, I've always loved cars since I was younger. Lived in San Diego, so La Jolla, tons of exotic cars. Back in the day, it was called Symbolic Motors. I'd go there all the time, take photos of exotic cars and just like brochure shop. And I remember when I got my license, I was like, I couldn't wait. Like I took my driver's test the morning of my birthday, December 29th, 7 a.m. I studied. I was like, I can't wait. I can't wait to get on the road. And I just remember being like trying to watch YouTube content about cars. And it was Mighty Car Mods, and it was like That Dude in Blue or Chris Harris.
I was say Drive Network stuff, yeah.
And it was all reviews.
Yep.
Like, I'm driving this car, here's how it is. Not too much car installs. Yep. There were some DIY forums and stuff like that someone make a video and just blasted it to a thread. But there was no one that was like, there was no one that was in the world that I was watching of like vlogging that did car stuff. So I was like, and because as I mentioned, I played hockey my whole entire life, even to when I still started the YouTube channel, I was still playing hockey. And like, there were some seasons where I did school on the road where we had like a school teacher, like we were traveling all the time. Yeah. And we were not allowed to, you know, I was playing AAA and I was like flying to different states, playing for different teams, playing AAA. Like that was like, I was supposed to be a hockey player. Like that's how I was raised to be. And we weren't allowed to like really like have fun. Like once you got to the hotel, no hot tub, no pool. You could go to like the convention. No, because it would get you too tired for the next day. Like just all these like random rules that we had.
By the way, not the tangent, but the last we had LZ on the show, and the show ended with him being like, going to TJ's for the hot tub. He's like, do you know about the hot tub? I'm like, I don't know about the hot tub. I guess I'll have to find out. So
it's LZ's favorite thing is the hot tub because his hot tub's never working at his house. So every time he comes over, he's like, can we use the hot tub? I'm like, yeah, we can use the hot tub, LZ. So like more or less, because I watched YouTube, I had this MacBook that I did all my schoolwork on, and I would like go on iMovie and go in like the photo room, whatever, the photo booth, and I would just like make stupid videos with my teammates.
I forgot about photo booth.
Yeah, like that was so I learned how to edit, and we would do just like stupid shit, like just dumb stuff. So I knew how to edit, but never like did anything.
How old were you at this point?
Man, 9, 10, 11, 12, like just like making homemade videos. I have a YouTube channel that no one even knows about that still exists today. That's from that era. And it's like videos like how to make a smoke bomb out of ping pong balls and tin foil. Like it's still there. It's still there. And like, I used to play guitar a lot. So like, there's like videos of me like teaching you how to play like the Crazy Train solo. Like I had a channel before this channel, and I had like a skateboarding channel. I had a bunch of stuff that I would just like throw it up. So when I got my license, I was like, I want to film myself with my car because this type of content doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I just truly enjoyed it. Like I just truly like no intention of anything ever happening. I just liked filming myself with my car, and I was like, it'd be cool to look back on one day. And then like, you know, fast forward and like I started to do it more and more and more, and like didn't really have any success or traction, but I sold my BMW that I had and got a BRZ, and again, with no real intention of YouTube involved in that, but I started to, you know, I lived on the forums. I was a forum junkie, like, and I was trying to research how to do like the things I could afford. And there was write-ups and stuff. I was like, I'll just film it so I could like throw it on the forum.
Yep.
And at this time too, like I didn't have any money. I worked like as like a part-time salesman at a wrap shop trying to like commission cars out. And I got most of my funding by just going to the casino. I love blackjack.
Oh, really?
Big blackjack player.
I didn't know that.
I have blackjack tattooed on my arm. Like
wow.
I fucking love the game. So my dad always played when I was younger.
Like, do you count cards blackjack, or is that like?
I can't admit anything on camera, Scotto. No, but I use advantages to the game to play it. But so
I asked that because like there are people who like blackjack are a different type of person than someone who likes poker. It's like a very different game. Like, so I went through a period of time where I dabbled in liking blackjack, and then I lost a bunch of money one weekend, and I was like, I don't really like blackjack.
It could definitely
anymore.
happen. You just have to have the bankroll to play out your systems. But long story short, my dad had a bunch of blackjack books, like a bunch. And he played in tournaments and all the stuff. So like there's a casino where I live called Verona. It's no alcohol, 18 and up. So when I was 17, that's when we started to like in high school, you could drive, sneak in there. And I read every book my dad had on how to count, how to understand the game, knowing every hand, all the situations and stuff, which like you still have a very big probability to lose. But I was like, I'm going to sharpen my scalpel as much as possible and try to win. And I'd be like, okay, next week I'm going to try to save up for like an exhaust. All I have to do is win like $400. So I'd go in there with like 50 or $75. And at the time, the only thing I could afford was like $5 minimum, 6-deck, 8-deck, continuous shuffle, which like can't really count too much on those, but I would just gamble my way to get enough money to film the video. And I did that for like a year almost before the videos like started to make traction. And throughout this whole process, I was, blasting all these videos on forums to try to get extra views, every Facebook group. And then I was just getting like chewed alive by everybody, like all the old men, which is probably dudes my age now. That was just like, just hating on me for doing stuff like this and like, whatever, I get it.
How did you deal with that at the time?
Well, before they all just like ended up blocking me on all the pages and all that stuff. I mean, I was just like, I got an extra 1,000 views on this.
But I know like you got a lot of critique early on because again, you were one of the first people to be like, I'm learning as I do this. And everybody wants to be like, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I just didn't know any other way.
Yeah.
So I wasn't like, I didn't come from like this. I've, been watching like such and such. Like I didn't have any other information that I had absorbed other than just like magazines and stuff. Like I wasn't in the world.
But like it didn't
of cars.
deter you.
I mean, it definitely like sucked. I'm just like, I'm just trying to do this. I just didn't really think I understood most of the critiquing, and which is why in the videos I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. But like, if you're watching me, clearly you want to try to do this. So like, I'll show you my trials and tribulations to like give you the encouragement to try it yourself because I didn't have anything else. I didn't have like a cool car and like an obnoxious amount of money to just like have people care. So I really tried to focus on the videos were always, I might get you interested to click the video because it's an install of something or a topic or something, but the video was always half of that or maybe like 40% that and then 60% me vlogging me.
Right.
And whatever friends I was with. Like that was my like angle. It was like, well, all I have is me. And then, fast forward a little bit and I was like, okay, there's like some traction here. I'm making like $200 a month. I quickly started to fall more in love with the side of business and the side of where I thought the industry was going, almost more than the content itself.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
I still loved the content, but when people started like emailing me to like promote some like whatever, I started to realize that there was an angle to this game. And I remember very early on reaching out to like websites like ft86speedfactory.com and like these random BRZ websites. And I was like, hey, I have this channel, I have this thing. If you give me, I remember one of them was like, if you gave me like $1,000 of retail price, I didn't even know what cost of price was on that. I was like, if you give me $1,000 a month on your website, I will promote you in every video saying I got your stuff. And I was like, dude, if I do this, like, I could get like 4 more videos this month. And I started when I started like getting feedback and I'm like 18, like I'm like a notebook from Staples, like writing out these like business plans and like trying to like strategically like pull random things out of my ass, I started really falling in love with the business side of it and what it and then as I started to become a little bit more knowledgeable about that, I like was 100% convinced that YouTube and Instagram were going to be the future of the automotive culture in the sense of TV commercials, TV shows, magazines. I was like, there's no way there's not going to be more of me.
And this is like 2014, 15 kind of.
Like 14, 13, 15 around there. And I quickly became much more intrigued with the business than anything else. Like obviously I loved the cars and that was the passion behind it, but I was like, I can use this in a way to create something much more, not really knowing how far it would go, but I just remember like every night like visualizing and dreaming. I'm like, there's no way I will not be one of the top creators and do like everything I have today, I wrote out on my like vision board when I was like 17, 18.
Is that something that like you set as goals for yourself, or was it like
not even goals? Because a goal to me is something that you don't think can really happen.
Right.
It wasn't, I never not thought this would happen. Yeah. Like when I got started, I was like the thought never came through that like, oh, maybe it can't happen.
Yeah.
It was like, no, it's going to happen. I just got to keep doing it.
It
wasn't even really a goal.
It's interesting because, you know, I'm 15 years older than you. And it's always interesting when I speak to people who are your age or younger in the YouTube setting, because like there's very little gatekeeping involved in YouTube in that if you build it, it can happen. Where for me, when I first got into the space, like I had to have a magazine hire me to do that because I couldn't really, there wasn't a platform to do it on your own at the end of the 90s, early 2000s. So it's like you needed that person to take a chance on you. You couldn't like just kind of go build it. So I think it changes that mentality of like, for you, you're like, yeah, just as hard as I can work, I could probably get this done because like the pieces are here to go do it. I just got to go do it. Where for me, like at least the first couple of years, like I felt that way once I started Hoonigan, but I remember like when I was in the magazine business, you're just like, okay, what's next? And like, what's the next business? Or like, you know, like, cause I wasn't running my own thing. It's like I was working for someone else because you couldn't really build your own thing unless you had millions of dollars to like, to go do it. So I find that very interesting. Cause I remember for me, it was like my 911 was my first goal. It was like, well, when I was young, because I climbed magazines quickly, so I was like, I want to be an editor-in-chief by like before 30. I hit it by 25, and then I was an editor-in-chief of 3 magazines before 27. And I was like, oh, I want to own a 911 before 30, and then I did that. And it was like, oh, I want to, you know, like, and I started to like set these like weird like goals, but then I ended up like achieving so much other stuff that like I had never planned on that like I kind of threw the goals out because like the goals weren't that important. You know, it's like the 911's cool, but like you see it sitting outside Dusty right now. It's like what was cooler was the thing that I didn't realize I was going to build.
What I almost find is usually the goal, right? Let's use that as a terminology. That's usually the worst part about it. In the sense of once you get that thing, it then turns into the dusty 911 you have outside. And when you look back on it, you're like, what was almost more fun about the process was dreaming about it and working hard and like being the self-fulfilling prophecy for yourself that like you can get it and you do. And then you're like, oh, I'm over it now.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I think my favorite part about project cars is like the dreaming up the project. Yeah. Like almost like when it's getting close to done, it's like it almost feels over. Yeah. And I get for like other people like who really enjoy the driving part. And I enjoy driving my cars, but it's like it's not the same thing as like the process of building it. Like I like building companies, I like building content. Like all of that is more important sometimes than the finish for me. You know,
sure.
It's like the journey is more important than the destination kind of thing.
Yeah, very like, you know, cliche, but I think like I always get a lot of I always get a lot of flack because I'll like sell cars when I'm done with them. And I'm like, well, yeah, I sold it because like it was way more fun it's way more fun to be like, oh, I can't, like, I'm talking specifically about like the GT3 conversions we do and stuff like that. Or like the wild stuff. And it's because once you build it, it's like borderline kind of like not as good as you want it to be. There's that. Or it's like, you know, the slippery slope of overbuilding and then it's a nightmare. But it's just way more fun to like the chase and the thrill to try to get that part or that one thing and like try to scrounge it together. And like the first time you mount it mount something like cool on the car, you're like, oh, like it's those moments that are more enjoyable. And then it's just a sitting block of money, and then you want to build again, but all the money was tied up in that one.
Do you keep track of how many cars you've built?
Yeah.
What are you at?
50 or 60 that we've done on the channel.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Something like that.
Yeah. And you built some like crazy stuff. It's not just like, oh, I strapped this together.
No, they're all like,
yeah, like proper builds.
like there's nothing left you could do type kind of energy.
Does that stay exciting for you?
No, which is why I do the GT3 shit. And why people are like, you just keep doing the same thing over and over. And I'm like, because you can't do it. Like half the fun is like the high of like, can I find someone to do what they're not supposed to do and sell me this old race car body that is supposed to be for the racing teams that I'm going to like destroy to put on a street car. People don't understand how hard it is to actually pull that shit off.
I want to get back to some of the business conversation, some of the early stuff, but let's take a moment on this because I actually think that there's this really weird thing that's happening with a bunch of like creators right now, and I not whether it's good or bad, but like everybody is sort of moving into the GT3 space, right? Meaning like I think everyone built crazy cars. They did all this stuff. They've been successful. They've made some money. And they sort of realized that like better cars from the factory are just better cars, right? And it's like, Vinny doesn't want to build another, 1J14. Like that's just not where his interest is anymore. He'd rather just buy another GT3 or do that. But it sort of like gets away from like what a lot of us originally built our audiences around, which was like, I'm going to take this thing and make it into something super special that like wasn't already there. How do you balance that for yourself? Because like, and you have always had nicer cars. Like you didn't really start with shit boxes. Like even your first car was like a 90 or whatever.
I just try not to care. I feel like if you're building for the audience, you're screwed.
Yeah.
And like we all are subject to it. I'm subject to it sometimes where like I'm doing it because I think it's what people want to see.
Yeah.
But like once you've been doing it for 15 years, you're gonna run out of cars.
Yep.
You're going to.
Yeah, for sure.
Or at least ones that you're like even just slightly interested in.
Yeah.
Like no offense, like I'd never touch a Volkswagen. I'll never build one. I'll never build. I just don't see it. I don't get it. Like maybe like a newer GTI, like maybe, but like I've done every JDM hero car you could think of. I've owned every exotic you can think of. I don't really care too much for hypercars. You can't mod them. It'd be sick to spend $30,000, $40,000 a month on a lease for a little bit, but then you'd be like, all right, this is, you get a cool write-off. Like, but other than that, it's like, okay, what's left?
Yeah.
Right? Which is like, me and Adam spent a lot of time talking about this, where it's like for Adam, he just, it's like, what weird drift combination of a car can I throw together? And then you get into like my standpoint, it's like, okay, well, I don't like, I just buy what I like. Like what I'm feeling in that moment, I'm like, I want one of these, I'm going to try and buy it. But eventually you kind of run dry. And that's when I fell into the GT3. Like I first did it with the 458. And at the time there was only 2 in the world that were converted. And to give a little bit of backstory, because a lot of people don't really understand it, but the GT3, I don't mean like Porsche GT3 or like anything. It's IMSA Racing GT3 class. Level. Exactly. Where those cars from factory, but from like Ferrari Racing or like Pro Drive or something, they're creating a OEM, let's say, carbon Kevlar wide body, and nothing in the chassis is originally the same. It's just the body for homologation, blah, blah, blah. And you can technically like, you can't buy them, but you can if you bribe someone enough and never reveal your sources. And a lot of these cars, they're like currently what's in GT3 is just the current lineup. So like 296, M4, Vantage, new NSX, but that's more so like Japanese, not necessarily here. But there's like a slew of cars that currently there's these not rare, but there's parts being made for it that you can only purchase if you own a GT3 race team. Yeah. And then I fell into that, like found a team that had because the 488 had just came out, so they had a crashed 458 with spares. And I was like, would you sell that to me? And a little bit of negotiating, and then got it, converted it, and I was like, this is the coolest thing in the world. Like everybody wants all these like aero parts and all these things, but this is like the coolest of cool
I mean, the one thing is I always say this, like once you're in and around real race cars, you kind of start to realize how dumb tuner stuff is.
Very much.
Because you're like, oh, this is on the level, right? Like I remember like, you know, when I was working in the WRC, it's like you're sitting here like at, you know, you talk about Pro Drive or M Sport and these companies, and you just look at like what goes into something. And I remember like explaining this, and I think nowadays people understand a little more, but they're like, well, I don't understand like why that rally car is so expensive. It only makes 300 horsepower. You know, my Evo makes 700 horsepower. And it's like, yeah, but your Evo can't run at the limit with a big fat power band for 3 days straight. And this thing can, right? And it's like the amount, like what it's being asked to do is so much more extreme.
Yeah, without failure.
Than what you're doing.
Yeah, without like live on red line.
Right. It's not like you spun it once on the dyno and it's good. It's like, no, this is things going to keep doing, and that's what it's built to do. And like I think you build a different respect for that when you actually get close to that and you see it, or you see how much work someone puts into a piece that you never even see in the car.
That, or if you ever dive into wheel to wheel in any class, like whether it's Miata spec, which is gangster and doesn't get the credit it deserves, but like look at those cars. And a spec Miata car is like 50 grand. Yeah. It's a Miata, but like they're designed to just not stop. And it's so freaking cool.
Yeah. Real racing is such a different level above like tuners and even a big, just above like track day stuff. Like
not even the same. Yeah.
It's a whole different world.
And everything, you know, on new cars today is just like 4 or 5 years late old technology from IMSA or F1. Yeah. So like when I like really wrap my head around that,
do you like this because it's a lot more of a challenge?
I like it.
Part of it.
It's like a drug.
Because like when you talk about this, when you're like, oh, it's these things and it's really hard to get this and get that. Like that's no different than someone who's like searching for like a really rare JDM piece. It's just on a different level.
Yeah. Well,
do you know what I'm
there's
saying?
a couple things I like about it.
Like you can't find it on Marketplace.
No,
but like
1,000%. Like one thing that I don't know, like once you've been doing this for so long, it's like, what's like your new drug? Right. For me, it's like, I'm the only person who's been able to get a G82 M4 GT3 on the street. Good luck. I'm the only person by the way, who has the 488 GT3 Evo who's ever put it on the street. Yeah. Yeah. That's pretty fucking cool. Yeah. And go do it. Yeah. If one, you think you have the contacts to be able to pull it off, try your hand. Right. Then they're not supposed to sell them. So good luck getting it to be sold. And then it's usually more than the price of the car. Yeah. And then they don't fit. The chassis are different lengths. So like nothing about it will work. You have to either change the geometry of suspension or get crafty with bodywork and then dump another 40 or 50 grand.
Do you feel like you got bored of regular cars and this is like your new
kink?
100%.
100%. And like, it's just cool. And I'm like, okay, how many times can I go buy a car, do every bolt on possible? And that's why I started building friends' cars. Yeah. I'm like, enough of me. Yeah. Like, I really have all that I want. I don't really want to keep, like LZ is a different, like he has like,
I didn't realize he kept all this.
Yeah, cars. He keeps it. And
I figured he just slowly, because like I know people who bought cars from him, but like the cars that matter to him, he keeps them all.
Yeah, for sure. And we always go back and forth. I'm like, dude, LZ, like get a grip, like sell some of your stuff, like reinvest it, do something. He's like, no, I don't know, I like it. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. Like I currently have like 25 cars and I have a lot. And there's a select few, a handful that like I'll never sell that I've had forever. But everything else I kind of use as trading cards. So at a certain point, once you dump $500,000 into a car, you can just flip it over for the next thing. Yeah. And a lot of times, because not that everything is sponsored, but like specifically the GT3 stuff, when I did my first 458, I bought that 458 crashed in half, rebuilt it for pennies on the dollar, and then got the kit on it and then sold that for a really handsome profit. So I got to like make content out of it and then flip it. And that bought me my Aventador. I bought the Aventador the next day. Yeah. Like I just was able, so it's like, it's just, I like to be able to treat them as trading cards, get my experience out of them. And then if you really want to get into the content side of things, once something's being built, no one wants to watch it anymore, despite everyone being like, oh, you don't drive it. It's like, I'll post a video of me driving it and you don't want to see it.
No, we dealt with this at Hoonigan. We would build stuff, and then that would do a certain number of views,
Right.
and then you'd finally go do something with it, and you'd spend more money on going and do something with it because you're like renting out a track, bringing in a team, like you're doing this whole thing, and it would do half the views.
Yeah,
and you start going like, is it worth the expenditure to go actually get all of that sorted, or is it better to just move on to the next project car? And like, unfortunately, the business side of it and the content side of it is like, no, just people want new. They want the next thing.
And which is valid, and like every creator's probably talked about before, which is why the ones that like end up working out, like there, there's some builds you build and you finish it and you're like, oh, like it's kind of ass.
Yeah.
And then there's some where you're like, it's great. Like it doesn't, I can take it anywhere. It just works. It doesn't do anything weird. And those ones I keep, but the ones that I'm kind of like,
yeah.
The thought and the theory and the journey of it was much more fun than owning it. If someone's willing to pay X amount for it and it can help fund the next thing to keep the show going, I'm happily going to take that and take whatever criticism. But also I try to not factor in what anybody else thinks as well, because no one on surface level, I feel like a YouTube channel just looks like, oh, he's just building shit, but it's like, no, you don't understand how much a month it keeps just for the operation of. I mean, you come from the Hoonigan side, you get it. I mean, and we're like a very minute scale, but like it's very expensive, especially if you're trying to like build beyond what you currently have.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube is just a difficult space, and like we can get into the whole business of this, but it's like, I don't think people understand the amount of work it takes to make money on YouTube. No. Like, I think people are like, oh, I upload a video and then I make tons of money. And it's like, no, the actual YouTube platform itself, like, isn't really. I mean, I remember, like, people, like, we would forget to, like, get our payments from YouTube because, like, the amount of money on YouTube was not what was, like, keeping the lights on.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying? Like, you'd be like, I mean, it wasn't nothing, but when you look at the amount of money that was invested into an episode, we weren't making anywhere near that back.
Yeah, I mean, YouTube's my lowest revenue stream.
Yeah,
by far.
As it for everybody.
By far.
Yeah. I actually saw something, I want to bring this up because I saw this, I guess Donut launched something on Tubi the other day. So they did their new high-low series. So it launched on Tubi instead of YouTube, right? And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And not that, like, I don't really, I've never watched the show before, so I don't really know anything about the show. Because as anyone who works in content, we don't have time to watch other people's stuff. You're barely making your own stuff. But I jumped into the comments because I was like, I want to see what people watch. And it was like huge negativity around, like, oh, why are you there? Like, this is there. And we could get into the debate of like, you probably shouldn't bring a show that was already on YouTube off YouTube. Like, people don't like that. But I will argue that, like, I understand the model of like, yeah, you got to make content, like you got to make money from it somewhere. So it's like YouTube is not the best home for every piece of content. There's some things that work really well on YouTube, and there are other things that just don't.
Yeah, well, I think it's also depending on like what the original like poster or the channel, like what's their goal.
Yeah,
like if your goal is to build a show and do all these things, and if someone outside hands you a $2 million contract for 2 years, you're gonna take the deal.
Yeah, because it makes sense.
Yeah, and like financial security and like all these things.
Well, I think one of the things that like, like sometimes like you read like other people who are outside the business's perspective on something. You're like, oh, I never thought about it that way. And like, I don't know, not that it makes sense, but people are like, I don't understand why my YouTube, why this YouTube channel or this YouTube company or YouTube brand is not on YouTube. And it's like, I think that is such a weird perspective because like, I never thought of Hoonigan as a YouTube company because like it was just a piece of our business. It wasn't like the whole business, right? And I think the same thing for Donut. Like they eventually ended up mostly there and there was a lot of business there, but that like wasn't it. But I think maybe that's because we came from an earlier traditional media era where like if you're most of your business is on YouTube, like that's just like people like you do YouTube, you don't do elsewhere.
I would agree with that.
That's how you feel about it.
Well, my perspective is I was in like the early stages of YouTube.
Yeah.
Like as a consumer and like a creator.
Yeah.
And YouTube was, their motto was broadcast yourself. It was a platform that was designed for individuals to get a camera and make homemade videos.
Yeah.
And that's what it was. This was before Jimmy Fallon and all these, big networks started getting involved. So that's the platform that I fell in love with. And it's free to change and that's fine. But I remember when Hoonigan came around and Donut, it was like, there's a small side of you that's like, man, fuck that. Fuck that.
Let's get into it.
It's like, how do you compete with someone that has, I'm going to throw random numbers out there. I'm going to tell you how it felt. How am I going to compete with someone that has $10 million a year to spend on an episode, that can hire X amount of people, that can have Mr. Ken Block come in and just show his car collection and do all these things and then buy all this stuff and then do all this stuff. And I remember, I'll speak for myself. It's like, man, how I have 10 grand, I have 10 grand in my bank account. That's crazy for me. How the fuck am I supposed to compete with that?
Yeah.
And it was frustrating a lot of times.
I get it from your point. And the funny thing is in the end, the model that you had is actually, I think, the only model that works on YouTube. Because you're right, that is what YouTube was built for. And by the way, if you talk about automotive, it's like, it's us, it's Donut. But if you talk about the greater world of things, it's BuzzFeed, it's Vox, it's Awesomer, it's all these other brands, it's Vice that saw YouTube as this opportunity, and they've all pretty much failed, or at least failed in what people thought they were going to be, right? So it's like the platform has definitely become this thing that's like, it's not meant to build a big business on. It's meant to take one thing, lift it up, and then you can use that to catapult other things, right? Like it's a good trampoline for your other businesses. This is which is what you've done.
The whole reason why Casey and I started his old vlog,
was
to help with Beam or whatever it was,
right? And for us, Hoonigan was around since 2011. For us in the early days, YouTube was a place for some videos and the Gymkhana videos.
Yeah, but for a while it was just Gymkhana.
It was just Gymkhana.
Exactly. Yeah. And then it turned into
But here's the question. Do you think Gymkhana is the type of content YouTube was built for? Because I think it's very much a POV thing.
Where else would that content live?
That's the problem. In the early days.
But even today.
Yeah, it doesn't really.
I think so. I feel like that was built for YouTube.
Right. But that was, I think there was this weird time because when we were looking at YouTube, we weren't really looking at the single creator space. We were sitting there looking at ad
space.
Well, no, we were looking at Motor Trend. So we're looking at Motor Trend and their success there, and we're looking at Roadkill and the shows they're doing because they were massive. I mean, Roadkill was really big.
The TV show,
the Roadkill show on YouTube.
Oh, I didn't even know they had one.
Okay, so and again, I think this is a POV thing, right?
Yeah.
So we're looking at Motor Trend and what they're doing in that space, and they were doing car reviews, they were doing the Roadkill show. And all of that was crushing. Roadkill was doing 2 million views an episode, right? And it was this weird in between. It wasn't television level, but it was a step up from vlogging. There was this middle zone. It wouldn't have. I don't think it would have worked on a Discovery Channel.
I know what you're saying.
And it felt more real. It felt more raw. There was just an element to it of these feel like two guys, it's Finnegan and Freiberger going out and making this content together. So we were looking at that stuff going, wow, that's a really cool use for YouTube. Now realize, to rewind back, I was at 0 to 60 magazine. Most of the guys from 0 to 60, or a bunch of the guys from 0 to 60 went to go do Drive. So they went to go do Farrah's show, Chris Harris on Cars.
Harris, yeah.
They were that early version of basically the YouTube. I forget what they called it, where YouTube was giving people money to go make content, right?
Yeah.
So they got into it, and then Turk had the Network A deal, and we helped them with a bunch of that stuff, and that was sort of this weird early transition, I think, where YouTube went from the yes, upload your own home videos to let's start making shows on YouTube. So that is always how we sort of looked at the space was hey, this is an opportunity to remove the gatekeeping of television.
I remember when there was a time where YouTube picked 10 creators and gave them a show. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
I remember like PewDiePie had one.
Yeah.
I don't remember it very well, but it was like
YouTube Red.
It was like maybe it was right when YouTube Red dropped, and it was like Red episodes that released like a TV show. And they like tried their hand at it.
Yeah,
and
it didn't really work.
Yeah.
So and I think it's funny because like when we were like, hey, we're gonna go do this, and I get it from your point of view, is like we felt like this big company. The reality to us, and the reason we started doing content was because we were at this point. We had Gymkhana and Gymkhana-like content that was a piece of the business.
Yeah.
Right. It wasn't really the goal, but it was a piece of the business. And we were making so much of that stuff, but we were like investing in equipment, investing in editors. So we're sitting there in a building that has all this stuff in it to make content with.
Just to sell the Hoonigan brand to more people.
Yeah. Right. Like that was the business model. Like the business model was, and you know, we talked about this before the cameras turned on, but we did a Zumiez deal, right? We're the first automotive brand in Zumiez. They don't think it's going to work. They give us a 20-door test. We end up going all stores, which was 600 plus doors in a month, which meant like we went from moving a little bit of product to like we had to go get a loan to be able to print all of the stuff, right?
Did they give you a net 60 or they lower it for you?
I think we were on net 60 on it, yeah. But like, and it was this like nightmare situation of like, okay, go, you know? And I was like, okay, let's go figure this out. And then they're like, okay, what are you going to do to market this and to support this? Oh, hey, please pardon this little storytime interruption brought to you by my good friends at FCP Euro. A few weeks back, we kicked off a whole new show called Firing Order. And now I'm searching for BMW's late night on Marketplace because I made a big argument that the BMW Z4M Coupe should have been one of the top 5 drivers' cars after 2000. While it didn't get into the top ranking, it definitely got into my head. And now I got a little bit of an itch to scratch. First thing, of course, you do at this point is you start looking up all the problems. Sure enough, there's a bunch of garden variety issues. TPS failures, rear trailing arm bushings, engine mount failures, sticky idle control valves, problematic clutch delay valves. But the main event, rod bearing replacement and Vanos system rebuilds. I'm pretty sure Vanos is German for VTEC. I got to double check. The good news is though, I went over to SCP Euro and not only do they sell all of the parts I listed above, they even make a full refresh kit for the Vanos. So those of you who are listening, what am I getting into with this whole Vanos issue? Decide whether or not I really want to get myself into a summer fling with a Z4M Coupe, or am I just on a road to heartbreak? So if you too are thinking about adding a little European flair to your midsummer night fever dream, head on over to FCP Euro because they're the best at helping keep European cars on the road by supplying you with all of the parts you need for those somewhat unreliable but beautiful vehicles. Check them out, fcpeuro.com. And then they're like, okay, what are you going to do to market this and to support this? And
they asked you to do the marketing?
Oh, we were like, because I think part of the deal was like they didn't know our audience. Like we walked in and it was like skate, surf, like that was their business.
Yeah.
They straight up said to us, we don't understand why we should have you in the store. Like I'll tell you this meeting. We had the meeting. Jim Bob, who was, I don't know if he's still at Zumiez, but he was like the head dude or the head buyer at Zumiez at the time. And he straight said to me, the only reason I'm taking this meeting is because we made a lot of money with Chemblock and DC Shoe Company. He's like, that's the only reason we're taking the meeting. He's like, I don't understand why an automotive brand should be at Zumiez. And I said, okay, let me make the argument for you real quick. And I was like, as I was telling him, you know, like there's a major crossover. I'm like, if you look at our audience is wearing stuff that you buy in your store. Like you're not seeing that there's this like younger group that like skates, snowboards, rides BMX, like does this, but also is into cars. And this was sort of the sell for him. Long story short, he's like not buying it. Like I can see he's kind of like looking away. And then I mentioned something about people getting Hoonigan tattoos. And he just looked at me and goes, bullshit. And like at this point, Instagram was like maybe a year or two old. And I was like, go on Instagram and just type in hashtag Hoonigan tattoos. And he does, and a ton of tattoos show up. He just stood up. It was like a 20-person meeting. He stands up, walks out, and then like 3 other people walk out with him. I'm just standing there like, okay. One of the buyers comes back in and is like, all right, we're going to do a 20-day test or like a 20-store test. We did the test. We sold through on almost every store.
Did you guys push anywhere for that, or did it just
Yeah,
happen?
we pushed for the 20-day test.
On what? On YouTube or Instagram?
On Instagram. We were only on Instagram at that point. Like we didn't have a basis really on YouTube. I think some stuff went up on YouTube, but like we weren't making content on YouTube. It was like, okay, like that went out. Then they went all doors. So we were at the time the fastest brand to go all doors. And it was like, at first it seemed this is awesome, but it was like a blessing and a curse situation. And now it's like, okay, we have to go support this. And like I had come out of the magazine business and I knew that like ad sales and all the stuff was all bullshit. Like I wasn't going to go pay somebody to advertise. And there really was like, it was this weird in between. Like the blogs were like not really working. Like YouTube wasn't where it is now. The magazines were dead. So it's like, okay, we're going to make our own content. Like we're going to go and like really ramp that up because we had already had the success.
And that's what
of
Gymkhana.
Well, Gymkhana had already existed.
How many?
So at this point, we're on Gymkhana 7. So it's the Hoonigan one is like what's hitting market. But we realized like that's a one-time a year event. Like we have to ramp everything else up. And that begins sort of like this bigger push. And at first, we do it all with athletes. So it's like Ryan Turk, Chris Forsberg, like, but the problem is like their schedules are like, that's their business. Like,
did you guys have funding to pay those people?
No, we do. During that period, everything was like barter trade. So it was like, you're making this video, like we'll pick up the costs of making that. We'll do this. We'll trade things out. We'll pay for things. And like, it was like, we have marketing budget that we can go do things together. And that was like very much like how that operated then. And then from there, we started building more and more content to the point that, and then we were doing a bunch of white label stuff. So like, I was like directing Volkswagen commercials. I was directing like Kia stuff. Like we were like kind of just doing a bunch of other stuff because at that point, there wasn't a company in the world that wasn't asking for a Gymkhana look in their videos, like in their commercials, like that, like in advertising, everybody.
Did that pay well though?
Yeah, that did well. But like it was.
How much time did that take?
Enough that we stopped doing it. Like it was enough that it was pulling me away at a certain point. And we had this discussion of like, do we start a whole separate business to just go chase that? And like at this point, it was never. Being a media company was not ever what we thought Hoonigan was going to be, right? Like that wasn't really the goal because at the beginning, the goal was the Ken Block model, which was like built.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
So Ken at this point had already done his rally stuff?
Yeah.
Do you think that Hoonigan would have worked without Ken's pillar of being a professional driver?
Yeah, because the first year we never talked about Ken. So the first year we only did drifting. And we were
what was sales like?
Because DC was still Ken's sponsor. So Ken had an apparel partner. So we couldn't be Ken's apparel partner. So DC
but from
was still
first
there.
year without Ken to year 2 with Ken?
Like Ken was there, but like there was this one moment where at the end of the first year, Ken had won something and we posted on Facebook because like Instagram's not there yet. So we post on Facebook, congratulations to Ken. And the comment was I don't know why you're talking about that no talent ass clown. He has nothing to do with a brand like Hoonigan. And I screen grabbed it and I sent it to Ken and I said, I think we win. Because the original thing was Ken was like, this brand can't be
tied to him,
an extension of a licensing for me. He's like, I could just go do my own licensing deal and just call it Ken Block. He's like, it won't grow if it operates out of that. So year 1, we just invested in all of these other, like we were like, we're going to go heavy in drifting. We had like 7 or 8 people who were like sponsored on the brand. And then we went into off-road. So we're doing stuff like BJ Baldwin and like the recoil video. I mean, the recoil video is bigger than a lot of the Gymkhana videos.
But do you think that Ken's involvement was a major catalyst for everything Hoonigan?
I mean, you can't separate it, but I don't think there was a huge piece of Hoonigan that was like completely separate from Ken. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it was too.
Do you think it was different audiences?
I think it was different audiences for sure. Yeah. We built out our, like in the business side of it, we built like a breakdown of like what our audience was. And like a quarter of it was like the Ken loyalists. Like they are here for Ken and Ken only. And then there's like the crossover Venn diagram, which is like, I like Ken, but like I'm actually more here for Hurt. because like as that audience started to grow and we started to get into that. But like in the early days, like we had very broken up. We had like the drifting audience, we had the Ken audience, and like you gotta remember in the early days, drifting kids in a certain era didn't like Ken because Ken was seen as like they were calling him the Drift King, but he wasn't actually in drifting.
Like a rally guy.
Yeah, and it was like there was this weird like Ken was like not cool to like a lot of people in drifting. So it's like we had to like kind of develop these separate pieces here.
Okay, so I have a question.
Let's go.
It might be too personal.
No, go.
Do you think if Ken was alive today, Hoonigan would still be successful? In the terms of, I guess, everything that Hoonigan is today.
I think that the
apparel brand.
Yeah, we were already on a downward. There was already a downward moment before Ken passed. So you think that if he was here today, he still would have stepped away? I think that,
or if he's like, I want to revive this, I want to keep this going, I'm gonna make sure, and he would have used his influence and his power with you to create another big wave.
For me, like, and I've mentioned this before, like I was already leaving.
Sure.
So I was leaving before he passed.
Sure.
So it was like how that would have continued. I think that it would have been a different version of Hoonigan because Ken's focus was always the stuff Ken did. So like Ken was not interested in the daily transmissions of the world.
Okay, I have another question.
Like that wasn't the business. I think what you would have seen was a Hoonigan that maybe focused a lot more around like him, his daughters, like his son, like as they came up, because if it was up to Ken, he really just wanted to do rally stuff. Like that was the focus. Like Gymkhana was the dance he had to do so that somebody would pay him to go rally race.
Okay, that was my question, was how much involvement and like straight up, like what was his role responsibility with Hoonigan as far as the direction and where it was going?
He gave me the most amount of autonomy. So like for me,
so he put his trust, like
so like
a lot of his trust was in you to steer the ship.
Yeah, so it was two businesses. So in the early days, like there was two separate businesses. Ken's team was one business and Hoonigan was another business.
Ken's team being his race team?
The race team.
Which had a budget from Hoonigan Pool.
That had its own budget.
From where?
From his sponsorship dollars.
Separate of Hoonigan.
Separate business. Okay. So in the early days, you have 43 Racing, which was like which was his business.
Yeah.
That he ran that, and I worked on 43 Racing, and then I worked on Hoonigan, and he consulted on Hoonigan. That was early days because, like, for him,
what would he consult about?
Like, I mean, he was like the guy was like a marketing genius. So it's like you go to him and be like, "What do you think about this as an idea?" And like he's an amazing soundboard because he would, like, we used to refer to it as bulletproofing. It's like you just shoot holes through the idea. Like you just, and he's really good at that. So he's sitting there with all of the experience he had from doing everything he did at DC Shoes behind, because he was the guy behind the guy for DC, right? So it's like everything for Danny Way, Rob Dyrdek, all these people. He was the guy who was then sitting. I sat in that position as he then became the Rob Dyrdek, kind of moment. So he was this amazing person to have for that, right? Which was great. He had a really, really good eye for apparel stuff. So in the early days, he was a lot more involved in the apparel business. As the business grew and he got busier and busier, he had less and less time for that. And then eventually I had less and less time for that. Like by the end, I was very disconnected from the apparel business. Like, and I say the end, I mean like the last couple of years.
Yeah.
Because the media business, like you're always just chasing what the business is and what's making the most money.
Yeah.
I mean, there were times where because Burnyard was doing well, like that's where my focus was. So like I was always like, whatever the big focus is, like that's where I would go. That's what I would work on. The media business was not something that Ken actually that wasn't like something he saw as a business model. I was a media guy. I had come from magazines. So like for me, I was like, I see this opportunity in YouTube. I see this growing. And from his point of view, it was like, okay, cool. If we can use that to help sell other stuff, let's test it. Like there's this joke about what happened with the media business, and it's kind of true, is there was a guy who was working for Hoonigan. He was he was the interim CEO because he was part of the other investor in Hoonigan, which was WMG, and he was there. He was like basically like my babysitter. Like he was the guy who was there to make sure that like I didn't buy dumb shit, right, or like forget to pay people, right? Yeah. He was never in the building. He'd show up like once every 2 weeks to come down and have a meeting, and he was supposed to become full-time CEO. Like I was kind of excited to finally have like as the business was becoming more professionalized, I was excited to have like somebody else come in. Long story shorter, he's like, hey, I got a job. I'm going to go work at Billabong. I'm out. And I was like, okay, well, we're about to like launch this whole media thing. I'm like, what do you think I should do? And he's like, I think you should just do it and not tell anyone. He's like, and 6 months from now, if it's making money, he's like, good. He's like, if it's not making money, this whole thing's probably over anyway. He's like, so just go. He's like, no, it's going to take everyone 6 months to figure out what the hell you're doing. Because it was literally like Ken was super busy running the race team and like that was doing well. And like that piece was a good business. And Hoonigan was sort of in this like, okay, we're selling apparel, but like it's a lot of work to sell the apparel. Is it worth the effort that's going in? There needs to be another side of this. Like this has to grow. And like we hired an editor. We had this guy Teague, who's actually still there now. And we launched Daily Transmission. And like that changed the direction for Hoonigan.
Yeah.
Like, and that was like a skunk works project. And what I was getting at initially before we took this massive tangent, which I enjoy. I enjoy the mic being turned on me. But was this moment where we were sitting here going, we have a bunch of equipment that we invested in to go make. When Can-Am launched the X3, we did like the entire program. We operated as their agency. We made all of their videos for the launch of it. We even did their influencer. They didn't call it that back then, but we did like their influencer marketing, connected them with different people, like gave vehicles to different people. So we were like living in this
Thanks for hitting me up, by the way.
We didn't know each other back then.
I'm just kidding.
You were probably, and there was this cool moment where, but what was realized, what happened was this moment we realized this shit was taking a lot of time, and yes, there was a good business on it, but the business of production and agency work, it's like a 20% margin space. So and all of a sudden, like we're all getting sucked into this, but trying to sell apparel, and like the business was not really looking good. Ken's business was working, but Ken's business was entirely related on Ken. Like, and it was like, and we were at the point now, because, and this is to rewind a little bit, but like our relationship with a lot of people, like for example, BJ Baldwin never was paid directly by Hoonigan. But like we designed some of his liveries, we did Recoil 2 and Recoil 3 for him. So like there was this trade out of like, and like if
you're going to give him promotion.
We were basically operating as his marketing arm and his like, and his content arm.
Yeah.
As a trade of services in a relationship, right? And that was the model early on. But eventually as we kept growing, we couldn't scale to do that anymore. Because now it's like, oh, we got 12 different people. We got Leah Pruitt, and we've got
you kind of left your sweet spot.
And now all of a sudden you're like, okay, we're drowning trying to take care of these guys, and we're not actually making direct money off of this. Oh, and we're also doing white label work for manufacturers and other partners. And then it was like, okay, we had these cameras, and it was like literally just like a down month. And we said, we're going to make 20 episodes of this show concept that we had that was originally an Instagram concept. And we were like, oh, let's do it on YouTube. And I think like originally we were like, each one's going to be less than 5 minutes. And then it just exploded into something else. So like for us, it was not like a complete plan. It was like YouTube was interesting. We knew we wanted to do something there. We weren't really sure what it was. And then it was like, okay, and this was probably the part that you hated, was we were like, and if we're going to do it, like, let's hammer it. Let's do fucking 14 episodes a week, which is what we got to at one point. It was like, there was by like the end of year one, like, I think we, like in year two, I think we were uploading 14 episodes a week across all the channels, which was absolute burnout and totally fucked, and was a bad idea. But in the beginning, we launched on 4 episodes a week, which meant that like we went from, I remember the first video thinking, if this hits 100,000 views, it's gonna be success. Like it'll be cool. and it took like a week to get up to 100K or 2 weeks to get to 100K. And it was like, wow, it's really cool. And then it's like, okay, you're doing 200K in the first 12 hours, right? And it's like, it was just like sort of exploding. And then obviously that like changed the whole business. It changed the people that we were hiring. It changed what we could do.
100%.
It actually created a bit of like a power shift in the business, because before that, it was like the athletes had all the power. And now all of a sudden people like Hurt have the power. You know what I'm saying? Like it really flipped things upside down.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I mean, it was great. Did that answer your question?
Yeah.
And to rewind back on like the Ken thing, it's like Ken was the super big projects. Right? Like that was the stuff that he was really interested in. He was never watching like the upload of Daily Transmission before it goes out. Like that wasn't the world for him.
I didn't think that. I mean, I think I asked those questions because Ken is someone who very early on I identified as someone that had a model that was very successful.
Yeah.
And I always like think of it internally to myself, like there's pillars. There's a bunch of pillars that I want to achieve. And then you look across a few different people globally who have all these pillars that have reached, let's say, I don't want to call it some level of success because that's a very subjective term, but he's accomplished a lot of things that I want to accomplish. And Ken was one of them. Mad Mike was one of them. And Vaughn. And they all do their things differently, but one thing that I've identified with all three of those individuals that opened up the door to a few things that like I've been chasing personally is some sort of, usually you're not taken seriously enough unless you're like a professional driver in something. You can't just be like an online creative that races in a bunch of different pro-am or amateur things. There is some sort of level of, you're only taking, it's almost like a fake, it's like when someone's sponsoring a channel and they're like, oh, this person has 5 million subscribers, but gets 50,000 views an episode versus someone that has like 200,000 subscribers that does 200,000. It's like they like a lot of like bigger brands or opportunities have to go through a paywall of a professional driver to some degree. And that also, you can't get an OE deal unless you have a professional credibility.
That's where the current bucket was,
Yeah, but I think it still is today.
Yeah.
So I just remember like identifying like, where do I want to go? Where do I see my life? What are the things I want to achieve? And the three individuals that really did it well was Ken, obviously. And Ken was a far superior of the two as far as like the content side of things and the brand of Hoonigan and what he's been able to accomplish.
Yeah, I think the difference between, and I worked with Vaughn, I've worked with Mike. Both of those guys are amazing and have built these amazing things around them. And I also think both of them very much looked at Ken too, right? Like, I mean, the first time I ever met Mike was with Ken, and Mike was sponsored by, DC in the early days, through New Zealand. So like there was a relationship there, obviously big relationship with Ken and Vaughn under Monster in the early days. Was that Ken was, you realize like you were still younger than Ken was when he started racing rally. So like Ken started racing at 35, 36.
Yeah.
So it's like he had spent 35 years, of his life already, and he had spent, 15, 20 of those building some of the most successful brands in skateboarding. So like he was a really accomplished, super smart, genius level marketing guy who then got into the driver's seat and was looking at it. He looked at his driving not from a driver's point of view. He looked at it from a sponsorship point of view. Like he looked at it the way that he looked at Rob Dyrdek or these other guys and said, like, why aren't you doing this better? Yeah. So it's like, I think that was like a huge difference between him, where everyone else is like, I want to be a race car driver.
Yeah.
How do I make this other thing work?
Yeah. Well, I find myself in a very similar situation to Ken, and like I've studied a lot about his life and what he did when he started, very much. I remember very early on, he was a very big role model for me.
You read Agents of Change?
I haven't.
That's a good book.
Okay.
Yeah. That's the DC storybook. And it tells like sort of how Ken took this sort of like perception is reality concept and like shifted the whole skate market.
But I remember, I just am very fascinated of his story.
Yeah.
And those are Mike and Vaughn themselves have done very impressive things in slightly different way. Vaughn, rather than creating a Hoonigan, created RTR, which the current modern day Shelby is Vaughn, and if people don't pick that up,
super successful thing.
Yeah, I mean, and just if you look at the RTR program and Formula Drift alone, like I've said this before on a podcast, like it's incredibly wild and so cool. But I'm just super intrigued of the whole Hoonigan story and the rise and how it was built and where it was going, what your guys' intentions were, where were sponsor dollars acquired, and that's where there's certain things in my life I've been like, okay, well, if I want to get certain sponsored things, I have to go and drive in something professionally.
Right.
You have to make a decision. Not that you...
Do you feel like that's where you go from here?
Kind of.
Yeah.
Which in the last 2 years, I've explored a bunch of different...
Do you have that want, though? Because like you're saying it as if it's like the route for business. But like I think like you have to have the passion to be like, this is what I want to go do.
Well, I think everyone that's into cars wants to drive professionally for a living.
Yeah, there's a piece of that.
There's an absolute major side. And, you know, going into Formula Drift has been like a very big, like on the cuff decision that we've been dealing with internally, or I've been dealing with internally. But last year I did 30 wheel-to-wheel braces with a partner, and you know, with the intention of like, we want to train you here to get you to GT4 or NASCAR. This is before Cletus got involved. But to do that, like they're like, we don't see the money in Formula Drift.
Right.
Like, pick your poison. Like if you want to go race something professionally, where do you want to go?
Would you want to go do NASCAR?
100%.
Oh, really?
100%. 100%, because at a certain point, like I love doing YouTube, at a certain point, like
I'm just saying NASCAR as a discipline versus other stuff out there.
Let me put it this way. If someone gives you an option to say, hey, we're going to fund you and train you to go drive in NASCAR, do you want to take it or not? And I would, 1,000, because at the end of the day, like my YouTube, I build cars, but like it's really about my life. I feel if I wanted to pivot and do something different today, I could. Whether or not half would stay or not, like I don't need to keep doing this. So I do it for fun. And I always promise myself the day I'll stop is the day I'm like, I'm not having fun anymore.
That's why I left Hoonigan.
Yeah.
I woke up one day and I was like, this is not fun anymore.
Yeah. And currently I'm trying to decide, like, I guess in the world of drifting and the competitive drifting and entering Formula D is like, is it going to still be fun when that's not a job, but like I still like when we do every drift series and drift comp we can do west of Texas, and we're highly competitive, and when we lose, it's usually to a Pro 1 FD driver in the comp that we're in. So like we know that we're there. And I really want to go and do it, but it's half the side is funding. And I do look at it as a business side. It's like, okay, if I want to go.
It's also really saturated with a similar.
Exactly.
Space. Like a similar, like I do this and I talk about it on these channels. And
exactly. So it's a much more complex question, in my opinion, of do you want to do it? It's like, well, of course I want to do it. Everyone wants to do it. But the financial backing to make it happen, and I'd be much more willing to do something if I knew it would open a door down the line, which is why I entered the discussion of like, okay, well, if you wanted to get to GT4 racing with the potential of GT3 or going to NASCAR, I was like, I'm 100% here to entertain this conversation, which is why last year I did 30 wheel-to-wheel races and didn't film half of them. I just went.
Was it nice to not film
something?
Oh,
it was awesome. I know. It's awesome.
You mentioned before, I'm going to rewind a little bit, but you were like, I would never build a Volkswagen. I bought that Volkswagen probably like how you probably feel about paintballing now, where like I bought it when I was at Hoonigan because I actually thought like this is a car that no one, like the Hoonigan audience doesn't care about. Like they don't care about some old, slow Volkswagen. I was wrong. There was actually a bunch of audience that did care about it, but I kind of didn't really talk about it at all at first because for me it was more this nostalgia. It was like, that was cars for me before cars were a job. Right? Like it was before I worked in the magazines. Like that was what I did when I was 17. It was like wrenching on that. It was simple. It was this thing that like going back to the nostalgia. And even now I try to draw a line between like how much of the stuff I do with my like Volkswagens feels like business. Like I was telling you before, like I do this like small sort of invite only car event with Volkswagen stuff, but like I actually really enjoy going. Like it's one of the few things where like I'm operating a business, but while I'm there, I'm like, this is fucking great. Like I'm not stressed. Like it's super cool. And as I'm on the other side of like building this thing that I built, and like it's like now it's all about like I just want to do the stuff I enjoy doing, keep it being fun, and like keep that balance there. Because like man, I super lost control of a balance.
Yeah, 100%.
You know,
yeah. I mean, that's like the $1 million question. Is like I always tell people, I'm like, just find whatever it is you love in life and find a way to monetize it without expectation of result.
Yeah,
and you'll be the happiest man alive. But that's so much easier said than done. To find something you love.
Do you always think that's true though? Because like
100%.
Because
I'll die on the hill.
Let's die on the hill. Let's go to that hill, because my dad said to me when I was younger, you know, the line of like, you know, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, right? That cliche. And my father was a scientist, and he really enjoyed and still enjoys science, right? So it's like he enjoyed doing what he did. And then like I made my hobby into my life, and the best. Like some of the most, like I had really great times. I don't want to say I didn't, but I kind of question if sometimes if you do what you love, you actually work every day of your life, right? And that might be okay because you enjoy the work.
Okay.
But like it definitely makes your balance. It makes it really hard to have balance in life.
I think there's a couple things to identify and back up on. You got to work.
Yeah.
You gotta do something, unless you want to just chill on the side of the street, whatever floats your boat. Yeah,
but totally you gotta work. You gotta work.
But here's how I look at it. If you were to go back 20 years, was your dream job to be working alongside whoever you would have told yourself Ken would have been, and created a brand and tried to grow it? And like, was that like, this is the dream? All bets off, no caveat, no anything. This is exactly what I want to do.
I did exactly what I wanted to do, and I lived the dream.
But would you say that to your?
But back then, I'll be honest, I had a very different dream for myself back then.
What was it?
Because at that time, no one knew that the print industry was going to fall apart. Like, I went to college, and like was like, this is this thing I'm going to do. So, and we didn't know that things like YouTube were going to come out. But like, if you just say like, hey, you're going to be a storyteller and you want to go tell these great stories, you can do that. I think I far exceeded what I ever thought I would do in my life. So like, how can I have any complaints? Do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah, but what was your dream? Like, what was your My
dream was to run my own car magazine, and I did it by 25. So, like, I guess I didn't dream far enough down the line. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I guess I would have challenged you to dream bigger than that.
But back then, that I think like it, and I go back to the gatekeeping element of it. It was like to become the editor-in-chief of a magazine in that era, it would take people 25 years to get there. Because there was always that guy above you. There was always that guy above you. Like you look at like Jason Camisa. Do you know Jason? He does a lot. He does really great content on Haggerty. But he's like a journalist. I don't actually think he ever became an EIC. Like I don't think he ever got to the top because like going through that in the traditional magazines, Motor Trend.
But if you're a big fan of magazines, wouldn't your dream be like, I want to create my own? I don't want to work for somebody else.
Which is what I ended up doing because I built my own mag inside of another publishing company. Because at that point, if you made a magazine on your own, you couldn't get it into newsstands because it was like they called it the print mafia for a reason because like you had to have the ins through publishing companies to get to the newsstand and so on. So like, so I did do an element of that. But anyway, to get back to like kind of your point, it's like, yeah, I dream way bigger now at 46 than I did at 26.
What's your dream now?
My big dream now is to direct films. Like real movies. Like I got a chance to play in that world with Sun Kang when I did the second unit work on Drifter. But like my real want would be to go do full blown movies, right? And like, I think the ultimate dream would be like, what's the next iteration of a Fast and Furious or a Bourne Identity, like Bourne series or something like that. Like I would love to make that. Like that's like, because I really enjoy storytelling, and that mixes all the things I enjoy. Like I really enjoy cars, but I also just enjoy storytelling. Like that's the writer part of me, right? And the weird thing for me, I'm not sure, like, this is the most you and I have ever spoken other than that one dinner we sat next to each other at Magnaflow or whatever. Like I never wanted to be on content. Like that wasn't my goal. So like I was very happy being the guy behind the guy. There was an element at Hoonigan where it just made sense for me to step up and sort of speak as the brand guy, which is sort of that era of like, you know, like know your brand and like live your brand kind of thing. But like that wasn't what I want. I really enjoy directing other people, watching it all come together. Like if you look at everything I did through all of my career, it's like some of the peak moments for me are like directing Gymkhana films and also directing dumb shit in the parking lot for DT. Like it didn't matter if it was on a big scale or a large scale. I enjoyed that.
Yeah.
I don't mind being in front of camera. I got used to it, but it was never my goal was for myself to be that person. So so for me to actually be able to slip back out of that, not
so
be
what
that
what are you
anymore.
doing today to take a step towards that?
Now it's like, I mean, doing things like, I mean, the Hollywood business is again a new gatekeeper because it's like trying to do that, but I'm also I'm going both directions. So on one side, I'm trying to take all the meetings, right? So it's like you take a general, you take a lunch, like that's the Hollywood way in. But I also realize that like my more sort of, you know, nimble, like the way that, you know, you look at things as YouTube is like, well, then you just build it on your own.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Why haven't you done
at the
it on
same
YouTube?
time, like I'm in the process right now of like writing a script. Like I've got like this whole thing built out that's like very much a series that could spin out from there. And that's like, so I've got this like, I need to get more second unit directing work so that more people will be like, yeah, I'm going to give you $25 million to go make this. But then I'm also building this other thing that's like ready to go when it's there, but taking separate meetings on that. Because the interesting thing is, and not to move too much into the Hollywood side of it, but like there's a bunch of new filmmakers who have built stuff because like they had an audience or they had connection to an audience and they were able to sort of circumvent the traditional like model. So like that's really interesting to me.
Then you'll probably know way more about this than I do. The guy who just made the movie Obsession.
Yeah, Curry.
Yeah, didn't he like start as like?
Yeah, he's a good example of that. There was Iron Lung. There's been a couple horror films that have come out. There's another one called Backroom. Like this is like a whole and like horror has the one thing about horror that's really interesting is like it kind of has a built-in audience. Like if you're going to make an independent film, making something in horror does really well because there's just one, like there's still a want to see theatrical horror, like the shared experience of like getting like scared in a room with other people still works. It has more film festivals. Like there's a reason a lot of people go more into the horror space. But no, this is the new breaking of the model. Like what's happening right now with all of those films, Anora last year, which like, you know, swept in the Oscars and things like that. Like these are the new films that everyone's looking at and saying, oh, this is the different model. Because the model before that was the $200 million film, which like is not sustainable, is like doesn't really work. And in a weird way, I think that the movie industry could be right now where YouTube was in like 2012, 2013, where like the independent creator can go find an audience, connect with that audience, doesn't have to go through like the traditional model. But my God, is the traditional model holding on as tight as they can and trying not to let that happen. I think the difference was no one expected YouTube to do what YouTube did. So in a lot of ways, they kind of just let it run. I mean, you remember back in the day when you didn't even have copyright music? You could just put whatever you want on your channel.
Pretty epic.
And that's actually one of the things that changed. It's funny because I forget about that, but like it's one of the things that changed the content style of what we did at Hoonigan, because Hurt used to just make like banger videos. So it was just like drift videos cut to like trap music.
Yeah.
And it's like, we couldn't do that anymore because the copyright stuff shifted. So it's like that move to like a vlog format was really the only way you could kind of go, because like making these like music video type drift videos, which like was really big in the beginning of drifting.
Yeah.
Like you think about how many, it was almost like skateboarding. Like every
Did
single
you ever
drifter
watch
had
the
this
original Bloodmasters video?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean, but realize in that era, Hoonigan was friends with all the Bloodmaster guys, and a lot of the cars had Hoonigan stickers on them. So like that was early Hoonigan era, and like we were tight with all Andy and and Matt and all those guys. Yeah.
Super sick.
Yeah, I go back and watch it all the time. It's just so fun.
Yeah, we were
It's
just at
really,
E-Town
really fun.
like a couple weeks ago practicing, and we were in the hotel. We're like, let's throw on the old Bloodmasters video. It's so sick to watch.
Yeah.
But to go back to my original statement, I think that if you love what you're doing more than anything else in the world, you can't fail. Impossible to fail, because you will outwork every single person.
I agree.
It doesn't sound like you agree.
Because I think there's other pieces that come with it.
Like what?
I think there's a lot of people who really, really love something, but they just don't have the skill set to do it. Like I've watched other people or they don't have, like they may love it, but they don't have the ambition and the drive. Like you appear to be a very driven person. Like before you said you had a vision board when you were 17.
Yeah.
You do realize that's not normal.
Is it not? I don't know. I guess I'll backtrack a little bit. I grew up with a very traumatic childhood. My mom was really sick growing up, and I had to. My dad would take night shifts while I was at school, he could stay home with her, and then we would swap, and she has to be fully taken care of.
Yeah.
And she wasn't always like that. When I was like 12 or 11, she had a cardiac arrest. I found her in the bedroom, and just like life changed from that point forward.
Sorry, man.
But because of that, my mom was the breadwinner in the family, and because of that, everything changed. So I grew up throughout very like pivotal years of my childhood, just being very fearful of money.
Right.
That we're not going to be able to afford X, Y, and Z, this, and that. So like I acknowledge that I had certain traumatic experiences that very much changed who I was as a child. And it makes you grow up very quickly, which has its own negatives and cons, but it's also very strange too. A lot of entrepreneurs are people that have a lot of traumatic experiences as a child, but that's a whole different discussion. So I, to an unhealthy degree, worked way too much and outworked. And my thought process was, if it was me and you on a treadmill and you and I were both running to our thing, the only reason I am stopping is because I am going to die of exhaustion. I will beat you there.
Yeah.
Like that was my mentality from 16 to 23 or 24, which is like in my era of daily vlogging for like 3 years in a row. And I was like, I don't care. I'm going to outwork. But I only think that was possible because there was nothing else nothing else I would rather be doing any other day, Monday to Sunday, all hours of the day. There was nothing else I'd rather have done.
Yeah. Similar for me. So in that feeling that like I just have to work harder. Like I had like a really like I was one of those kids that was like really smart but never did the work, right? And then I went to college and I just had like a really fucking difficult time with it. And like, I had two parents who were academics, so like failing out of college was pretty rough. And like it was definitely one of those things where like my parents were like, well, you should like, go get your union test and like go become a plumber, because like that's where, like you're obviously not going to enter anything because you didn't, in the world of academia or whatever. And by like random chances, I got an opportunity in the magazine business. And it was something I wanted to do. I actually went to school for engineering, but like I had developed this like, man, I fucked up so bad. And like all my other friends like have their jobs like out of school. And like I'm literally I had to move out of the city because I couldn't afford it. I'm like living in Long Island in a cottage. Like we call it the cottage. It was just like 1-room house. It was like a casita. And like I have no power because I can't pay my electric bill. Like I'm just super broke. And I'm like, yo, what the fuck? Like how did this end up here? And at the time, now that I'm older and like I realize like a lot of it was like I had like undiagnosed ADHD and I didn't really like understand how to deal with my shit. But whatever, once I got that opportunity at the magazines, like I had this massive imposter syndrome. So I was like, yo, I can't, like, I'm not as good as these other people. Like, I didn't graduate college. Like, I don't have this backing. I don't have this thing. So the only thing I have is more hours in the day than you do. So, like, I would work a 16-hour day every day. And unfortunately,
You said earlier you didn't have ambition, but it doesn't sound like that's true.
Oh no, I didn't say I didn't have ambition. I said
What if other people don't have
I said yeah. I said I think for other people, like I've seen people who didn't have ambition.
I think it's kind of two in the same though.
For me, once it got ignited, and I was like, I can go do this thing I want to go do, and like I started working in culture magazine. I didn't start in cars, but like it became everything, and it became like hyper focused, and it was all I could do. It was all I would talk about, and I wasn't afraid to work way more than anyone else was. And I wasn't afraid to put myself into like health risk to work that
and
level.
I want to be clear, that's not like this David Goggins like you need to work, motherfucker. It's like you just love it.
But I will tell you that actually it's still something to this day that I struggle with, because like, and this is where it gets really deep, but like I built so much of my own identity in my work ethic and then the thing I built, that when I slowed down, I fucking didn't like myself.
Don't get me started on some therapy shit. I'll go down a rabbit hole here.
But do you know what I'm saying? Like, and
100%.
that is something that, because the first time ever, like in my life, like I was always the kid who was like, the teachers didn't like me because I didn't do my homework, but I would still do well enough to like get a B+ or an A- in the class. So it was like my dad was always annoyed with me because like I wouldn't do my chores. Like I was always a problem, right? And then all of a sudden I start doing this one thing really well, and people are like, "You're really good at this." And it's the first time that anyone ever said like, "You're good at this." And I was like, "Oh, I need that. I need that dopamine release." And then I just fucking did it. And I did it and I did it. And what I didn't realize until years later is like not everybody else wanted to work a 16-hour workday. So I burned out so many people around me. Like I burned out friendships, relationships. I burned out people who I worked with. And I never celebrated success. Like it was just like, no, this is to your point before, and I think that this is a little bit of the dangerous side of that, is that like my expectation was that we were going to win. So when we won, why celebrate? This is what we were supposed to do. It's like you don't celebrate when you wake up in the morning. Maybe you do if you're sick, but like you don't normally celebrate when you wake up. So for me, it was like, no, this is what we do. This is what we do. Like that's what we do. And I have spent the past 2 years in therapy trying to rewind that, because it built like a really toxic situation at Hoonigan, because everyone else was like, "Oh, we fucking killed it," and I'm like, "Cool, all right, next." Like I never took the time to be like, "Oh, hey, that's great," right? Like I never was like, "Oh, that's like cool, we did this." And I think that can be this dangerous thing of like, yeah, you set that expectation, but then like all you can do is fail. Like you can't win. You can only fail. And then you are completely living in like a fear economy where like that's what drives you. And you're smiling because I'm assuming that that's where you live right now.
No.
Have you separated from that?
I went so I've been in therapy for like 7 or 8 years now. And 3 years ago, I just gotten to a point that, shout out Sabrina. Sabrina was like, "You got to go here. You gotta figure your shit out." And it was a retreat camp, and it was based on individuals with extreme like childhood trauma and shit. And so I went there for a week, and no work, no phone, you don't know anybody, and it's men's group therapy, and everyone like was pretty fucked up. Like all very successful individuals.
Yeah. I think there is
but everyone from something like, just really fucked up shit.
Yeah.
That makes me be like, damn, like this, maybe I shouldn't really belong here. And long story short is I went through this whole thing and did like 50 hours of crash course therapy. And I've already been in therapy, but just revisiting and doing, not like psychopsychotics, but like doing these exercises that help relive certain moments and take you back, and just to people who don't really understand or aren't into this stuff, it probably sounds like some kooky stuff, but really learned a lot about myself, more than what I had thought, and just learned a whole set of tools, and really understood that my value, my identity, and myself is in my success and who TJ is, not who TJ is.
Right.
And really allowed me to help really allowed me to see work-life balance and what's healthy, what's unhealthy, because all of my beginning of my career was wildly unhealthy, but I had no one there to tell me anything different. There was nothing to check me, and what would I care?
Did you also feel in some ways like that was your only opportunity? Like, did you feel like if I don't do this, I don't know what else I'm going to do?
It's very interesting. My only viewpoint was I have this opportunity now, and if I don't take it, I'll never know what is. So why would I not take it? So I dropped out of school. I just went for it.
That was me too.
Yeah, but I also went through like a lot of different shit that like checked me super hard and allowed me to like reevaluate what's important. And also just the value of relationships with those around you has been a big one for me. Sabrina, my fiance.
By the way, congratulations.
Thank you.
Got engaged December, right?
Yeah. She got diagnosed with brain cancer 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And that was obviously an extremely difficult time. But it's also been the greatest thing that's ever happened to us. In a very weird way. We're both followers of Christ, and you know, there's a lot of life lessons that have come from the situation, and it changed her and was really tough. And I was smiling about the identity because as a female, and she's a very beautiful woman, a lot of her identity was how she looked, what she had, her perception of that. And I remember in the more beginning years when she got diagnosed, it was a hard thing because she felt like she was going to lose her identity. And she's very fortunate that, you know, she doesn't have any sort of chemo or radiation that involves hair loss or anything. So there's also a lot of hormonal changes, a lot of body changes, a lot of shit that can just change. But that really fucked her up.
Yeah.
And us going through that and her going through therapy and then me involved in therapy, you know, I was then positioned with the question of, well, what's my identity? What if, you know, God decides to pull YouTube from me or pull anything from me or someone or like, what, you know, what am I left with? Do I still love who I am today? And for a long time, I didn't know how to conceptualize that at all. And I remember my therapist was giving me a question, that like kind of like rocked my world, but I didn't like fully understand it when she first asked me. But she was like, Scotto, like, describe yourself. Who is Scotto?
Nowadays, it's a lot different story. But it's like nowadays, it's like I'm a dad who used to have a really dope life of like doing cool stuff, but I actually really enjoy being a dad now. You know, like and it's taken me the past year or two to kind of find a peace with that of like you know, like that I find more importance in that, and like that's been the shift for me. But I think initially, I like in a lot of ways, like my kid, I think sort of saved me from like having a heart attack because like I was just on go, and like I was like really not taking care of myself, and then like, you know, Ashley and I get married, we have a kid, COVID hits, and like I was forced to be home and to be present. And look, it was scary as hell because I had a company with all these people and trying to make sure it doesn't go under, and we're just like, and it actually all worked out fine, but it was scary to go through it, right? And it was also scary to have a kid when there's this like unknown thing that's happening, right? And realize both my parents are scientists. I've grown up around horror because of that, like because you know my mom works in cancer, my dad works worked in blood and stuff like that, and it's like you hear all of the worst case scenarios, right? And like, you know, so even when this was happening, like it was like everything was kind of like really tense, but I did get this moment to like stop and like have this like, this is so much, this moment with like my son and my family just was like so much more important for work. And because like people, and I've never really talked a lot about this, but like when people ask me, you know, why I left Hoonigan, it's like I think everybody wants like a single word answer, and it's like, yeah, I wasn't having fun anymore. But it's like, it was also like that, like becoming a dad, like was like, okay, I can't do this the way I used to be able to do it. And I don't want to do it if I can't do it the way I used to be able to do it, was like a big shift for me. So I don't know if that answers the question. It's like, I guess if I was to be like, oh, what am I? It's like, I'm a creative, I'm a dad, like, it's like, I'm like like a husband, obviously, but like, I'm starting to, I think for the first time in my life, and it's weird to happen that at 46, that I'm starting to feel really comfortable with like what I am versus like what I feel like I need to project.
Yeah.
But like that has all come in the past 2 years, and it took me leaving this thing that was, even though I don't have it tattooed on me, like felt like it was tattooed on me, and like for you, you built you.
Yeah.
Right? Like it is you. It's TJ Hunt. Like, yes, it's Hunt & Co., but it's TJ Hunt. I built a thing that was like, then like I gave up.
Yeah.
Like that was like, and I was like, oh, that's not me anymore.
Yeah.
Even when you were coming here today and the door was open, I was just like, I was looking at the 911 and I'm thinking like, am I ever going to take the Hoonigan stickers off that car? Because like in some ways, like that's what that car is. Like the car is literally called RWB Hoonigan, but it's still like, even in times when I was very annoyed with the company, like it's still a part of me. So it's like I see it differently than that.
Yeah. Well, 90% of people, you technically didn't. 90% of people usually answer the question describing themselves as like labels that they've given themselves. Like like if you were to ask me at the time, I think I was probably like, I'm a YouTuber. Yeah. I drift. They like, you'll describe yourself not with accolades, but usually in an indirect accolade to some said thing, when the healthy way to answer that question is, I'm funny, I'm loving, I love to critically think. You'll describe your ways and things that like you just as an individual, like mentally will have, rather than I'm a YouTuber. Right. I race cars, I build cars. And that was the one moment where my therapist kind of stopped me and she's like, okay. Yeah. Like we're, more or less what she was saying is you're identifying yourself, your self-identity is in the things that you've done, not in who you are. Yeah. And I was like, what the fuck? What do you mean? That is who the fuck I am. What do you mean? And that was like, when I was able to digest that, I was like, maybe I am kind of fucked up. Maybe I do need to kind of figure. And just carrying work home. That's off camera. Like I love separating. I love being able to drive to work. Yeah. To get myself ready. When the moment I come home, work, like YouTube, everything's left at the door. There's no car shit anywhere. And I love that. So I could just be me, not TJ. In that weird way, if that makes sense.
No, I totally get it. And I think that is something that like, I don't, like we live in this like really interesting moment in content and media where there is this like, whatever you want to call it, parasocial relationship that like people have with people. And like, I think that's like a huge weight that a lot of people don't realize when they get into it. Right. And it's like, and it's one of the reasons why like I want more to be less in front of camera and just more making stuff, because when I dissect what actually makes me happy, and that's like what I've had to do in like the past couple of years, is like, I like making stuff. Like I like making stuff. I enjoy the process of making stuff. I like making stuff with people I like. That's a big one for me. I like it going out there, and I like it being a success. But I'm trying to like kind of get back and focus more on that, where I know that for a lot of other people and a lot of conversations I've had with like other YouTubers or just like known people, it's like you get so into this, like you yourself becomes what you're selling, right? So it's like my views didn't do well. It's me, especially when it's like your face on the thumbnail, and it's like it starts to become sort of personal for you, And I think that there's a real dangerous like piece of that like people don't talk about,
Yeah, absolutely.
And and like you're one of the longest lasting people in the space, right? Like you're still doing this. There's a lot of people who flashed, were really big for a year or two, gone. There's some people who were there early on and they didn't make it past sort of the next step. And there will be new people who come out tomorrow that will go and do whatever. As I get older, it's like I also like there's just like less of a want to do some of that stuff. But then I don't know. I also do enjoy some of it. So like I live in this weird like it's a hard balance. But there was definitely a moment where like I didn't want to make my own. I didn't want to make content with me in it anymore at Hoonigan. And like a lot of people were like, oh, like Scott doesn't finish any of his cars, and it's like it was like too stressful for me to like do a lot of that stuff. Like I didn't want the camera on anymore. Like I wanted to focus on the other stuff that I was doing. I wanted to make the content for other people. You know? So
well, I think also too what a lot of that drives people to come and go is if they truly have a business structure that works.
Yeah.
I don't think people give credit as much as it's due to the channels that have been there and have lasted and how their ecosystem actually functions.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, you have to decide how big you want to get, and there's a sweet spot, which is a very hard thing to learn and to figure out and to truly understand. And also, too, with just working with different brands. Also,
what do you think your sweet spot is?
I don't think I'm there yet. As far as like revenue or as far as like,
I think like sort of the balance between it all, because like
I think before it gets too corporate.
For me, looking from the outside, right? Here's what I see.
Yeah, Sean, tell me what you see.
Here's what I see.
Let's see it.
Like you built a brand of yourself on YouTube, right? You built a viewership there. That's still important. But my guess is that that's no longer the major revenue drivers. So you've got other companies. You obviously have the merch. And obviously that drives all of that. And you basically have created sort of like it's like the human centipede of businesses where they all fucking feed off each other. So it's like you have to do the YouTube part so it can shit in the mouth of the other business to shit in the mouth of the next business. And I think that like, because this I think is what works really well. And realize like this is the... You gonna spit your water out?
Without a doubt. I just visualized it like exactly. I just saw the movie.
Where like all of those pieces.
It's a really good way to put it.
Need each other to work. No one of them sort of operates on its own. You couldn't go back to just doing YouTube, and you could probably just go do one of the others, but it wouldn't be as successful without the others. So you've created this like network, and at a certain point, that network can't get too big. Because they don't all scale at the same speed, right? And I say this because like Hoonigan was a very different business than what you, Adam, Cleet, it was just different. Like we had a real merchandise company that was like operating as that business and was keeping the lights on to begin with. Content then became a bonus to it. Ken in the racing program was like a whole other thing that was like completely different numbers. Like the numbers on that side were like astronomical compared to what we were seeing in like traditional YouTube space. And then there was just all these other pieces. And then it was like, there was a bit of like, we could just do whatever we want, make RC cars. Like it just kept kind of like do video games. Like, you know, that we just kind of kept building off of that brand. YouTube definitely was the feeder for that though. But not until 7 years in. Like we'd already built a business for 7 years. You guys kind of did it
backwards. As opposed to traditional now.
Like now it's like you build on YouTube, you grow that, and you go the other way. And I'm not, and like I want to rewind a little bit to the like, if Ken was still here, do you think Hoonigan would still be there? I wonder if, I think it's more if you rewind a little bit back more, and it's like, had we not have sold the company? Because at a certain point,
yes.
So at a certain point, once you sell a company, you no longer have control.
Yeah.
And I don't want to get too into some of this stuff, but like it had definitely gotten to a point where both Ken and I felt like we couldn't change certain things.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the difference, I think if Ken definitely had way more power and leverage than I did inside the building. So like, yes, there was, I think it would have extended the execution, but I don't think it would have like, we were already, I mean, to give you an idea, like Hurt left. Hurt had already decided to leave before Ken passed away.
Yeah.
So like it was already fracturing.
But the whole,
it was already fracturing.
But you guys built Hoonigan to sell it.
We built Hoonigan to sell it.
Which is one thing that I really fucking hated seeing.
It was the plan from day one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was when it sold, I just remember the internet.
What did you hate seeing?
People being like, Ken, doesn't want, this isn't what Hoonigan is. And there's always just people making videos that were getting crazy traction. I'm like, do you guys not realize like that was probably most definitely the plan way before with or without Ken's involvement?
Not only was it the plan, but it took 6 years longer than we thought it was going to take.
Yeah.
Because YouTube gave us a different trajectory.
Yeah, which that completely changes the ecosystem of the whole entire brand. If you're building something to sell it.
Yeah.
But that's a different discussion. But
so I look at it as like there was like these 3 different chapters. Chapter 1 was like Hoonigan, the skateboard brand for car guys.
Yeah.
Right. And that was like 2010 to about 17.
And takeover cars.
So, but
you guys are big on takeover cars.
But there was no such thing when we started this.
I'm just talking shit.
I fucking hate takeovers.
I'm just talking shit.
But I know what you're saying. But in the early days, that wasn't true.
Yeah.
Right. Actually, what was really weird was we were mostly big on trucks.
Yeah.
Which was weird because it wasn't really what we were doing.
You still see Hoonigan on the back of every fucking car today, and I'm like,
Tacomas, right? Like
crazy. It's a movement.
So, that was this thing. That was the first version of it. And it was like more underground. You kind of had to know what it was. Like you may have seen the Gymkhana films. Like that was the only kind of the big moment. But otherwise it was like a, if you know brand, right? And that was the intention. The intention was like, how do you build a DC Shoes, a World Industries? Like how do you create something like that for that? The next chapter was YouTube, which was like we didn't really know that it was going to go that way. Like, I think we all knew, to your point, we knew that if we worked at it, it would be successful.
Right.
Right. And we did that. We were like, we went in, and the minute we went in, we're like, we're running. Right. But then there was this third chapter that was never really figured out. And the third chapter was honestly leaving YouTube in a world where like Ken and I had aspirations to like do more stuff with streaming and like, because we had done the TV show with Amazon the Amazon Gymkhana Files. We wanted to do stuff in theatrical. Like this was already stuff where it was like, oh, it'd be really cool to do that. We also wanted to get like way bigger into the event space. And Gymkhana was a sport that we wanted to elevate like FD. So like for us, it was always like, what's the next chapter? What's the next chapter? What's the next chapter? So what I think when you look at Hoonigan from the outside, there was this peak moment from YouTube, and then YouTube started to track out, and it was like, okay, what's the next thing? Because I always looked at Hoonigan as like the automotive jackass. Like it's not here for a long time. It's here for a good time. Like that group was going to exist for a certain period of time. The minute people start having kids, buying houses, life changes. And it's like they're not as interested in building a $500 shit car. And like that's what our audience was built around, So like that was going to happen. Like people mature, that shifts, that changes. So for us, it was all about what was next. But it was all about like where we were going to go and where the next thing was. And we were actually excited about the relationship that we initially thought we would have in that deal because it was going to give us access to like bigger things and go do bigger. Like we were in the idea of like, bigger festivals and like, it was always like, what's next? Like I was never satiated with the current
sustainable on how fast you guys were going.
It's not. And that's the problem is like when you get off of it, you're like, yeah, this was like out of control. Like we were just like brick on the fucking pedal, just fucking go. And at a certain point, it was, I think like at a certain point, like no matter what, it was going to implode.
Yeah.
Like I would do it the exact same way again because it was like there was parts of it that were really fun. And I'm the kind of person who always wants a new experience. Like I always want to go do something new. So it's like, it was like if you look at like, and not the business, but you look at my CV of what I got to do at Hoonigan, it was a masterclass in everything. Like I got to be involved in so much different stuff. Like I understand apparel business in a way that like I never thought I would. I understand retail. I understand like obviously content stuff, but like on all different spectrums. Like I understand how to run a race program. I understand how to sell sponsorship. Like I understand live events. I understand how to get insurance for a motorsports event, which is like not easy. Like you learn all these things, and I'm sure that it's the same for you. That opportunity was what was exciting for me.
God, I'd be so curious to know how much you guys got in sponsor dollars for one Gymkhana video.
I'll tell you later. It varied, but they would be pretty big, yeah. So especially towards the end, yeah. Especially like when the Audi deal came on and stuff like that, yeah. It was sick. But and like that was amazing. I mean, like being able to like close down like a city and just. I remember standing in the middle of fucking the Vegas Strip and being like, "We shut this down."
Weird random side story. I met you. Gymkhana 7 right down by Art District.
I remember that. Yeah.
Josh Kalis brought me down.
Yep, I remember that.
And I remember standing there, I was filming something, and I think you're in the background of one of my clips, and I was like, "That's Brian Scott over there." and then I met Ken there and spoke like 2 words to him, and I was like, "Holy shit." And then years later, I did a SEMA meet and greet with him with Toyo, and I was standing with Ken during the thing. I was like, "This is fucking cool."
That's a cool moment, right? Like,
yeah, we talked. He's like, "So what do you do?" And I'm like, I was like, I don't know.
The thing everyone has to understand about Ken is he was a driver.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah.
Like he became a car guy.
Yeah.
Because it was adjacent to being a driver.
Yeah.
Like the first thing I ever did with him was Gumball 3000, and we were like driving. And like we had never met each other before, and we're like, we're just in a car for fucking hours at like 130 miles an hour. And Lucy had fallen asleep in the back seat, and it's like just me and him sitting there. And he's like, "Can I ask you a question?" It's like, "Sure." He's like, "How does like a turbo work?" At this point, he was like already on his way to be Rookie of the Year. He races a Subaru rally car. Like he is about to get like a Subaru deal for next year, but I thought he was joking. Like, I thought he was testing me. So I was like, well, because like as a kid who grew up working on cars, like this felt, but it's like he didn't go the same path as we did. Like he was always interested in cars, but he was building and like completely changing the world of action sports. He didn't have time to do that. And then he had this opportunity. He knew rally cars were cool. He wanted to go be a driver, but like he didn't fully understand how it worked. He had like a basic, idea of it.
Yeah.
And I remember I went home. I realized at this point, like, no one knows who Ken is. Like, at that point, like, he hasn't done Gymkhana yet. He hasn't done Stunt Junkies. Like, he's not a guy yet, right? He's just kind of doing well in Rally America, a small series. And I went home, and then there was just this thing where, like, you meet somebody, and you're like, this guy.
Yeah.
And by the way, I went on that trip to do a story on Rob Dyrdek, not on Ken.
Oh.
And I come home. And I fucking opened up my because as a writer, I opened up and I was like, chapter 1, the Ken Block story, and I wrote the story of like me explaining to him how to use a turbo, and I was like, I want this written because I think this dude's gonna do something, and I want to be able to go back to this moment 15 years later and remember like kind of like where this started, and then he ended up becoming like a bona fide car guy, but like he was always a driver first. Like if it wasn't fun to drive, he wasn't interested in it. Like
pretty sick.
He didn't care. Like that was where his focus was. His number one focus was being that, and then his number 2 focus was like being creative. Like he really enjoyed being better at that than other people.
Yeah.
Like he really cared about that. Like he wanted to have a different look, a style. Like that was just like the super important thing, and that you go back to like, because honestly, like we could spend an entire podcast talking about like what would have happened if Ken was still here. And I think that there was an element of, I think there's people who want to believe like, if Ken didn't pass, like everything would still be fine. Like, unfortunately, I don't think that would be the truth. Like, there was already massive fractures. Like, Hurt was leaving and I was leaving. Like, that was going to happen. right? So that probably meant everyone else would have left as well. I think that there would have been a Hoonigan that would have carried on as the Ken Block version of Hoonigan. But I think the YouTube version of Hoonigan
Hoonigan still exists
that you
today?
knew. Yeah. And it's and I'm not saying that like it's dead, but I'm saying like that era. Right? Actually a bunch of the guys are doing stuff with like Soupy's doing a project with them right now. Zach's doing a project with them right now. Like Gary and Micah is still there. Yeah. They've asked me to do something with them this summer, which I was like, yeah, I'm down. Like it's not like it was really even bad blood. Like I'm mature enough to be like, businesses are businesses, and sometimes businesses make bad decisions. And unfortunately, we were attached to that. And like that happened, right? And at the end of the day, it's like, it is what it is. I made the decision to sell the company. Well, I mean, me with partners. If it was my own company, I probably wouldn't have ever sold it because I enjoyed working at it. But like,
I have another question.
When you build something to sell it, that's the like everyone works for cheap or free.
Yeah. Well,
to a certain point. Like I was like one of the lowest paid people at the company for a long time because like I was investing in it, If you're anything like me, whether or not you have a real shop space or a lift at your disposal, you still end up working on the floor. So when I saw Vyper's new Mini Creeper, I knew it best suited my idiotic and often anti-ergonomic way of working on cars. It can be configured both low or slammed, and while Vyper likely designed this for detailers, it's great for those of us who will assemble a brake caliper on a cold, hard floor instead of at the convenient height of a workbench. Check out this great Mini Creeper and many more shop items at vyperindustrial.com. That's Vyper with a Y. The adjustable wrench is a shameful little tool, right? While super convenient, it's definitely a jack of all sizes and a master of none. You wouldn't catch me dead using an adjustable on camera for fear of comment section scorn. Thankfully, Wera Tools created the Joker self-setting adjustable wrench, which as you apply pressure, tightens down the German-engineered jaws to prevent rounding off. Finally, thanks to the Joker, we can use adjustable wrenches free of shame in the light of day without the stigma of that oh-so-convenient but not-so-precise multi-tool. Come out of the shadows and proudly buy a Joker adjustable wrench at weratools.com. Because like I was investing in it,
What were your thoughts on Wheel Pros changing their name to Hoonigan? I thought it was such a weird move.
Yeah,
I thought it was suicide.
I can't get into all of the details as to why it happened because I think I still have an NDA somewhere. But
I'll go on the record. That was a whack move. I'm holding back questions I know you can't answer, so I'm not even throwing them your way.
This is like I'm on your podcast.
I
like the back and forth. This to me is what I want this show to be, which is like. I mean, granted, we didn't really talk much about cars, but I enjoy the back and forth because, like, that's a conversation. I find it weird when you just ask people questions.
Yeah, I mean, I just have. There's just so much interesting stuff to talk about, and you were such a key player in so much of automotive culture when it comes to the internet. Like, there's just so much.
Yet you hated us because we came to YouTube.
Well, I didn't hate you guys, but I was like, because I didn't hate you guys. I was just like, fuck, how it just sucks to see you guys get this much traction.
Yeah.
And it's so easy to be on our side and be like, well, they have all the money in the world, so of course they can.
So can I tell you something that's really funny there?
You'd be like, we didn't have any money.
We definitely probably had a lot less money than you thought. I mean, comparatively to the number of employees we had.
Okay, but you guys had a building, this
I know
30,000 square foot, and you had your own little you had your own
the next building was 42.
You had your spot. I mean,
I know.
Yeah,
but that was all very intentional.
And you had all the help. You had 40 dudes to help build this thing.
But it was a double-edged sword because it was hard for us to scale once we were that
I mean,
big.
for sure.
Nimble is definitely better. I've said it before, 15 people is the sweet spot.
Yeah, I mean, my perspective has changed much more now than what it was then, but I remember just being like, me and talking to a couple other guys that were like me, I'm like, now what the fuck do we do? How do we compete with that? And then, you know.
I don't think we ever saw ourselves as competing with you guys. Because I'll tell you this.
No, it's just being salty and whiny on our perspective, being like, damn, I want to be able to do that, but there's no way in hell I'm doing that.
Yeah.
There's no way I'm going to ever get there. And now, granted back, I'd go back to myself and be like, trust me, you don't want to be there. Keep doing you. A lot of my perspective in and viewpoint has changed
Yeah.
in this current day. But I just remember at the time being like, Donut Media and Hoonigan, like these guys got like TV show production stuff. Like this isn't even YouTube anymore. This is just like
I get it.
making a TV show and putting it on the internet.
I get it. I'll tell you it from our perspective because I think it'd be interesting to hear. One, we had tried to go do a TV show. Like that was actually the direction we went. We met with Netflix in the early days of Netflix. Like I walked into Netflix with Chris Harris and was like, I want to do a show with this guy. And they were like, yeah, that's not going to work. And then he went and did a show at Top Gear. Like, because they just, none of the streamers like understood it. We pitched Discovery. Like we went to all of them and either they said no, or they were like, that's great, but here's the show we want to do.
Yeah.
Like, so here's the concept. Like I did a show at Discovery Channel that actually, we filmed it right before DT came out and then it launched during DT and failed. Right? So we did a show and at some point the showrunner said to me, okay, so here's the concept. You and ACP, I don't know if you know ACP, he's a rally car driver. He's like, you and ACP, you run a business where like you have to like restore these old cars to like do cool stunts. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not the business I run. And they're like, yeah, but no one knows that. I'm like, we have like 2 million followers on Instagram. Like somebody, like knows it. And we were a bit smaller. I'm like, people are kind of aware of what we do. Like my business partner is Ken Block. Like this is like, that's my business partner, not ACP. They're like, yeah, no, but for the show, like that's just what it's going to be. And I was like, no, it cannot be that. Like you don't understand. And we were struggling so much with that every time we'd go in, because people wanted to talk to us. They're like, oh, you guys are the Gymkhana guys. Oh, like Hoonigan's a pretty big brand. Like I see it on every truck in San Diego.
Yeah.
Like, like people wanted to do something with it. But then the minute we got in the room, we didn't have control. So I saw YouTube as a place that gave us control. Yeah. Because we had already had success with it with Gymkhana, so we knew what we could do there. I mean, the first Gymkhana went up in 2008, but we even had success with it before that because we had done Stunt Junkies with Discovery Channel, but then we cut the footage and uploaded it to like a fake account on YouTube, and it did more views there than it probably ever did on Discovery, right? But so for us, we were looking at Motor Trend as like they were like the big guy on the block, and they were so much bigger than us, dude. Like they did have those budgets and they had those cameras and they had the big building and they had this crazy studio that was air conditioned. Hoonigan never had air conditioning through all of its days. And it's like, they seemed like the guys we were going after, and they were already there and established. Like for us, like they were there, and like we saw them as the people to go take down, right? To go to them, and that was, and I think we saw Donut as a peer, but they didn't make content like us. Now it's similar, but at the time they were doing Explainer, so it was like it was just a different space for us. Yeah, and for me, I just loved I just wanted to go make a bunch of different stuff. When we called, like I refer to Daily Transmission still to this day as like it was Jay Leno's cars, or so Jay Leno, but for dirt bags. Yeah, like we'd have you on, we'd have like it was like we wanted to build the hub for everybody else. Like that was the way we saw it. Was like I want everybody to come on our show and do stuff with us. And honestly, if there was anyone style or like thing that we were stealing, like I wasn't looking at other automotive. I was looking at the Berrics. Like the Berrics was the model for us.
Interesting.
And remember, old Hoonigan, the original Hoonigan in downtown LA was next to the Berrics. And I was friends with those guys. So like that was a world where like I was looking at what they were doing and going, how do we do this in automotive? Like that was a huge inspiration for me, was everything there. Yeah, that was like a big part of and Steve Barrer was like a buddy of mine at that point, because like I got to work with, he was obviously friends with Ken. Me and him worked on a project and we kind of clicked. So it was like they're doing this crazy thing at Berrics. So for me, my thing was like, how do we get a space? Right. The difference was I didn't think my own employees were going to be the things doing something in the space. I thought it was going to be the Chris Forsbergs, the Ryan Turks, the Vaughn Gittins. I was trying to build a skate park for cars, and instead it ended up becoming, our cast of. You
got your own characters that really drove
that
the
was,
show.
I think, the part that was the surprise.
Damn, that's interesting.
So I tell you that because we wanted to go do this we wanted to go do it in the real world of Hollywood or whatever. Yeah. I'm happy we did it in the end, because it would have gone for one season and been canceled. But YouTube was like no one else would have us. So it was like YouTube was like this perfect home for us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no.
Does that change your perspective on it all?
I mean, yeah.
And I get it. Like, I get it because you're sitting there going, these guys have so much, because everyone always feels that way when you see the next person do something who's bigger and you're like, oh, this is coming in, they're doing this.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it definitely changes my perspective. I mean, it's really cool to learn about your angle and approach and what was like your inspiration, how you took that and molded that. I like find that like super interesting. And also like understanding like what was the ultimate motive behind it, like what was the goal for Hoonigan, where were you trying to get it to go, what, you know, and then what got picked up along the way, what side projects like Burnout and different things that, you know, have been casted throughout the motion of trying to just sell.
Yeah.
I just find that so interesting.
And at a certain point, like, I think there was this like dangerous mix of, not until the very end, I was never motivated to sell. I never thought about the selling. Like, I was happy to have a job that let me do this cool shit. And that's probably one of the reasons why it took so long to sell, because like I wasn't focusing on it. And eventually they brought in people to make us focus.
Yeah.
But it was this dangerous mix of something that wanted to have multiple verticals, because that's the right business, and a kid who has ADHD that's like, ooh, new, shiny, let's do this. So like I was jumping from thing to thing, and where normally like somebody would try to stop me from doing that, they were like, nah, yeah, let's let them cook. like on all these different things. That's cool. So that was the huge opportunity for me. It burned me out in the end, but like, and not everything worked, but we had a lot of things that were like, were really successful and a lot of fun, you know? And that's also why like we were always constantly doing new shows. It was always like, oh, we did DT. Yeah, okay, now we're doing this. Now we're doing this. Now we're doing this. Now we're doing this. And that's because like my brain was still like a magazine guy who was like trying to create new sections, new features. It wasn't always that things weren't working. Sometimes I was just bored. Yeah. And it was like, okay, I want to do something different, which I think it was stressful for my team some ways. Cause like you could see like when shows worked, they were happy to let them go. Like I would have done this versus that, like for like 3 seasons and wanted to go do something else, but it was so successful and it was so easy to make that like it just kept going. Right. Where for me, it was like, I always wanted that next thing. And that's, I think, back to you, like what you were saying when I asked you before, like, do you like making this content that the audience doesn't? I don't know if I was always concerned about the audience. I was like very concerned about like, I want to try this and like, it'd be cool to try it. Right. Like that was the part for me. Like for me, formats is like how LZ looks at engines, where it's like, he's completely motivated by like what engine can go do whatever. And that's like his weird thing that he gets so into. For me, it was like, ooh, can we do a different format? Like we did this show called Scumbag Labs, which was like Mythbusters for cars, you know? And like, but you know, we did, 24 episodes and then we were on to the next thing, you know? In hindsight, it built a really fractured audience. Like it probably wasn't the best thing to do from a business side, but it also made the company feel bigger in a way. Cause like we took the Venn diagram model, right? Where it's like, I want a little bit of every audience. Yeah. Which we had. Yeah, for sure. I mean, like the brand's known well because what it means to you, it means something completely different to someone else.
Valid, 100%.
Like that was, and like to the point you made, and I said before, to the kid who was like, I don't understand why Ken Block's a part of this. When Ken Block was
everyone kind of has their own.
Everyone had it was like their own the 4 blind men and the elephant. Yeah, right. Yeah, like it was like that model of Hoonigan. It's like we lived small in a lot of places. So we were still doing grassroots stuff in different places, even though you're like, they seem really big, but we were like, we tried to be like at a certain level. And that was when it was best. It wasn't always that way, but that was fun. So anyway, thanks for having me on the show and bringing me down the memory lane of
Hope we covered all the topics today and really got answered all the questions.
Well, we're like 2.5 hours in, but I do have a couple questions. I have a couple questions for you. Go back to the beginning on that. One, like a couple things we bounced off of pretty quickly is like your next, like if your next thing is as a race car driver, do you think you can maintain the rest of this? Because like having worked for race car drivers or worked with race car drivers, like especially, this isn't to take anything out of drifting, but like drifting is a lot less rounds, a lot less time involved in terms of like
for sure
for it especially compared to NASCAR. I mean, NASCAR is like I'm curious to see like it's a question I have is like, will Cletus continue to do all things Cletus, or was this the stepping stone to get Cletus to where he needs to be? I don't know. I mean, I know Garrett, but like I haven't asked him that question, but it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
You know,
I mean, I bet he'll be very successful in it.
I think he's going to be super successful. The question is will he still be able to do all the things that make Cletus to his fans and to his audience
I think it's
today?
like making a decision, like, do you want to forget about everything and dive in and be the best person who ever did it? Like, that's a completely different like mindset. I love drifting, and we're drifting now more than we ever have. And in the last like 2 years, we've built a whole new car, did a whole new race program around it. And I've dumped, hundreds of thousands of dollars every year just in doing it. And the point that we're left on right now is like there's nowhere else to go other than FD. And I don't really know if I want to for a few different reasons, but I know that I love competing more than anything else. And that level of, I don't really enjoy grassroots driving that much. I don't enjoy jam events. I don't enjoy any of that. I really just enjoy like being there with the purpose to try to like practice with a certain reason. Like I rent out Orange Show Speedway 2 or 3 times a month and invite out Odie or Dylan Hughes or any other pro driver. And it's just me and them. And all we do is run laps. And I'm like, hey, I'll pay for it. Just show up and run doors with me. And that's been my focus the last like 2 years, is to get to the point of where when I go to FD, I don't make a fool of myself, but also just to like, it's fun. I'm chasing a goal of trying to get better. So getting into FD, like I don't necessarily think it's going to like do anything for my career, let's say, but it gives me a reason and a why. And that's like something my business coach has really been working with me on the last however long, is they're like, we need a goal. Right now you're drifting and you're doing all the pro-ams, you're winning all these things and you're accelerating and all that stuff, but like, what's the goal? Yeah. And I'm like, well, I have friends that really hate FD but do it. Like a lot. Yeah. So I'm like, well, maybe it's not for me. Yeah. And then I go, well, I don't know if people will want to watch if I go and do that, because, you know, drifting videos aren't like the most popular thing ever. And eventually they help boil it down. They're like, well, what does TJ want? And I'm like, well, fuck yeah, I want to drive FD. Yeah. But it's going to cost me like, you know, just the budget to do, like, if you were to even go into pro spec, this budget, like you could nickel and dime your way and go as cheap as possible on 4 rounds of pro spec. But if you went into pro spec with a full, like our budget set for pro spec is $250,000, which there's a lot of guys doing it for way less than that, but that's like spare, you know, spare long block, spare everything. So you are 100% all in, that there's no issue. Like you will have, unless you write the car off, you're not done for the weekend. The only thing that's going to lose you is your skill. Yeah. So you get into this weird, like, okay, well, that's how you actually, like, you want to do it? I'm like, well, I do and I don't. It's hard to make it work financially. And at a certain point, you just go, financials go out the window. I'm doing it because I want to do it.
Let me ask you a question. Next year, cameras are turned off. You're on a sabbatical, and you're going to get to race. You're either going to get to go do a season of FD or a season of GT4. What do you go do? And like, you don't have to worry about the content side of it. You don't have to worry about the bills. Like, you don't have to worry about whether or not you're it's like a sabbatical year.
Yeah, I think there's 2 different answers to that, and I don't know what the answer is. One, I feel that if I wanted, I'd never become the best wheel-to-wheel driver.
Right, because you didn't start at 7.
Yeah, I didn't start when I was 6. Yeah. You're never going to, you can do it and have way more seat time and way more fun. And arguably, like when I do it at wheel racing, you leave the day being like, fuck, I just drove all day. This was awesome. Win or lose. But in drifting, it's like 30 seconds, you're out.
You know, Ken used to refer to drifting as the most expensive sport by corner.
Yeah.
He's like, if you count the number of corners you drive and what 100%. You pay to go there, it's like the most expensive
100%.
sport,
But,
other than obviously driving.
But getting a podium finish in a comp is way more fulfilling than finishing
mid-pack
or even on the box, in my opinion, on a wheel-to-wheel race. Because there could be some at the end of the weekend, it's like, yeah, like I was the fastest pole, I started in the front, I maybe had a little bit of action here or there, or you finished 3 through 3, 5, 6, and you're like, I was kind of just by myself. Where in drifting, it's like if you finish on the box and pro, you fought and
you beat out all
took
these
punches to the
battles.
face. It's just a completely different
Well, the bracket
adrenaline
system of it gives it a different.
And I feel like it'd be on a more reasonable scale, like on a more like surface level, it'd be way easier to become the best drifter in the world than it would be to become the best grip, like F1 driver in the world from this current standpoint.
Yeah,
I think it's a pretty fair argument. No one would really argue that. So like if my goal was to like I'm gonna go drive pro in something next year, if my goal was like, okay, I want to go there and like actually try to finish like top 5, FD would be the answer. Not saying I think I could go into pro right now with no pro spec experience and do all 8 rounds and not have no data other than what other friends are willing to share and driving any of those layouts. I would go and we would do that, but like 100% I would bet on that versus going and doing GT4, which guys have been racing for 25 years that are just gonna mop.
Yeah,
But it is way more fun. Like I did a bunch of
But if it's
WRL
more
last
fun,
year
then why wouldn't you want to do that then? Because I think you keep getting back to
because
the
I want to win.
Right. Okay, that's fair.
At the end of the day,
That's fair.
I spend the amount of money that I do just for my program
All right.
to win.
Here's a question for you. Is there anything that you don't want to win at?
No.
Yeah.
So I'm just a very like competitive person, which a lot of people are, which is fine. But like if I'm
So will you not do things that you're not good at? Are you one of those people?
yeah.
I think a lot of people are that way. But like that is something that like I've had to get over.
Yeah.
Of like I'm not good at bowling.
I was gonna say bowling. I was gonna be like, I fucking hate bowling.
I'm not good at bowling. The last time, and I was like, my wife and I did like a date night. This is something that happens when you have kids. You have to like schedule a date night. And we went bowling. My wife's better at me than bowling. And then at the end, I threw like 4 strikes in a row. And I was like, you know, I kind of like bowling. And she was mad because she's like, you normally suck at this. And I was like, man, I realize how motivated I am to do something when I'm good at it.
Yeah, like I hyperfixate on things. I find something that I love, I become really good at it, and then move on to the next thing.
Yeah.
That's like very much my personality.
You say that, but then at the same time, like you have been doing the same thing on YouTube.
True, but I've been able to
I know you've evolved it, and I know you've changed it, but you've had this world that you have continued to sort of nurture for a long time.
Yeah.
Like you have a staying power there. Like, is that because that has kept you interested enough that you've hyperfixated on that for that long?
I think that the deeper you go, the deeper you realize you can go.
Right.
Like when I first started, like I knew I'd get to the top, but I didn't know like really what that meant. Like I remember when I was the first person to get the first corporate deal.
Yeah.
I signed with McGuire's in 8 or 9 years ago.
Yeah.
Whatever the math is. And at the time,
did RJ bring you that deal? Yeah, because he had the vision to understand that.
Yeah.
Because in some way, RJ's like the OJ. He's like the OJ influencer in the car space.
That he absolutely is. Before YouTube, RJ was an influencer, and that's a whole different discussion. But I remember when I signed that. I mean, keep in mind, rewind the clock. Like the 10 people that are like big and are doing this, and everybody knows, we're all friends. We're all talking. We're all like texting or visiting each other and sharing each other's information. And I remember I went to everyone, I'm like, I just signed a corporate deal like a year long, not like and everyone was like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, it's possible. I'm like, we're making progress. Like I knew eventually the day would come and I would go to SEMA every single year, like sneak in without any credentials and make fake shit and try to like get sponsors. And I was like, one day it will turn. One day people will realize that this is the move. So like throughout my career, there's been like, I'm like, oh shit, this is possible. Like, it can go here. And especially with Hunt & Co. Like one of my goals is to make Hunt & Co. the largest automotive brand in the world. And now that Hoonigan has respectively stepped aside, it just really like opens it up to me, Cletus, LZ, and a few others. Yeah. And it's really, really fun. Like it's really like, I'm more in love with Hunt & Co. now in this last like 12 to 24 month period than I was, 5. Like I'm loving more of it now, which then Street Hunter, I found a reason to create Street Hunter. And now Street Hunter, like you were mentioning the human centipede thing, which I loved, but Street Hunter is its own thing. Yeah. Like I use it and promote it, but like I'm not, it originally relied on me to pump everything. Yeah, yeah. But now it's its own subculture. Yeah. A lot of people follow it, don't even know who I am, which is like fucking sick.
Great. That's the success moment. Cool. That's the, why do you guys do something with this
and I wanted to, and then throughout the thing, I'm like, why am I promoting everyone else's thing if I can make my own? So that was a whole nother like pick and choose your battle on that. There's a certain amount of balance you should have. That's why I created the wrap shop. So I'm like, dude, I'm just outsourcing all this for everyone else. Everyone's just telling me how great of promotion this is. I'm just gonna do it myself.
Couple things on there that I find interesting. One, looking at, first of all, on the hunt and code thing, this is a little side question, but I saw recently, like, you had this tattoo artist do some designs for you.
Neeks,
Neeks, and what's that? I found Neeks, right? It's
yeah.
I saw something that he posted about it, and I was like just reading through some of the stuff, and I thought that was cool. I actually think that tattoo artists are like an untapped source for graphics. We had a tattoo artist do a graphic for a helmet for Ken once. And it was just like, it was a completely different like perspective. I've had obviously graffiti artists do graphics for us. Like, I've always worked in the artist world instead of just like the traditional graphic artists. We've always had those, but I love doing that because I come from graffiti.
Yeah.
Like, that was my space when I was younger. So I saw that and I was like, oh, that's cool, and I liked a bunch of his designs, and I was like, it was cool. He did this poster. It was like the before and afters, and I liked like seeing like his vamp on it. But he commented something, and I was like, oh, I want to ask you this. So he said something about like he wanted to do this because like we need to get the culture vultures out of motorsports. So I bring this up because are you familiar with this? So I'm curious about your take on this, because as I told the story earlier in this podcast, which feels like 7 hours ago, was me saying we were the first at Zumiez, right? I'm really stoked to see you at Zumiez. I'm really stoked to see Adam at Zumiez. I'm even stoked to see Donut at Zumiez, even though they were like kind of our competitor right now. I'm stoked to see them all there because like we had to like bushwhack in to get there, right? What I'm not stoked to see is all these brands that were already there now doing car stuff. Right? Like, that's a weird one for me.
DGK, crazy one.
DGK has a closer acceptance to it because they have Kalis, and they have dabbled in it in the past.
I'll let that one go.
But Huff and all of these other brands. And by the way, I know these guys, I like their brands, but I can't help but feel like it was so hard for us to get our foot in that door. And then we finally do get our foot in that door. And the model starts to work, and it works for everyone. And like, it's like we were there, and then right after us, like Illis came in, and I remember Mark called me and said, hey, do you think we should go to Zumiez? And I was like, I want you to be at Zumiez, because the more of us that are there, the better it is. Like right now, like we don't belong in the store. So like we're in our own space. Like it'd be cool to see more and more. And then other brands grew up. But now it's like, you look at what's coming out of, it's like now there's all these brands that were not a part of motorsports, were in a different space, and now are making that. And I am old man on the bleachers. I've retired my brand. I'm no longer selling a brand. I don't really have like, I don't have like something in the fight. But as someone who was there when I was told like your brand doesn't belong here, to now see all these other brands doing that thing, and like motorsports to be one of the number one selling items at Zumiez, like how do you feel about that? Like, do you share the same thing as Neeks? Where
I do, but I also can't fault. So for one, let's back up. This all started, the culture vulture, in my opinion, started when Drive to Survive took off. If you rewind the clock, it lines up very, very identically with Drive to Survive.
Yeah, for sure.
The popularity of motorsport, the Hollister, is it Hollister? One of like the weird, whatever made like a collab with like McLaren, and it's like, what the fuck? Which is great all around for automotive culture. And then then you start seeing skateboard brands just like start making car stuff, which is like very odd. And originally like me and Neeks had a conversation where we're like, dude, these like you go to Complex, Con, and everyone's there like stealing what we really do. At racetracks, building cars, like blood, sweat, and tears, like what we really love.
Our culture is your costume.
Yes, exactly. And we're, there's one side where it's like, okay, like we're gonna blow them out the water. We're gonna get in the door. We're gonna show Zumiez or whomever and show their audience that like we're the real shit. And we'll show it through our designs. And if they ever get to our Instagram, they'll see the actual culture, and you'll win them over, game over. But at the same time, too, they're just trying to adapt to what's selling, so I can't blame them for that. And how much of my childhood was based off of looking at all of them, taking hard inspiration, and then recreating my own version of that. Because art is just imitation over and over again. Like, we can all acknowledge that. So, like, I don't, like, have this, like, vengeance, but I am like, damn, their culture vulturing us. What an awesome opportunity to go in and sweep. And then eventually it will be oversaturated and burn out, and we'll still live there, we'll coexist, and that's fine. But yeah, when you go into, like, not even Zumiez, but like Tilly's and PacSun, there's like some brands I've never heard before that just have like random skyline graphics that are like terrible and like incorrect. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, why would they not,
I think,
take an actual brand that actually is real in the space to that regard of culture?
I think, one, you're always going to have that whenever anything trends. I think the part that bothers me is when I see these collabs happening between, like, companies in our space with companies outside of our space instead of it being.
Can you give an example?
The TRD Huff one is a good one for me.
It's a wild one.
It's a wild one, and like, I mean, I think like I loved what Keith Huffenagel did. Like, I think the brand was super cool. I mean, they built an entire brand. It was a skate brand that made a sock with a weed leaf on it that really exploded them. But like so whatever, it is what it is. But like, it's weird to me that wasn't a relationship done with you or done with someone else. And it's like it's like it just seems like a really odd collab space when there are other brands in automotive that could have done that.
I agree, and I look at it like this. I would probably bet with certainty that our social engagement, just not even on my just Hunt and Co, is outperforming and is more active and better than Huff. I'd probably, right?
Yeah.
Pretty safe bet. I don't know.
Skate brands aren't really crushing anymore.
I'm just assuming and validating that you agree with me.
Yeah.
But I would argue that there's more sales throughout Huff daily from door to door and online
that's
than Hunt & Co, just
that's
because
their primary business.
It's fucking everywhere. So like when I like look at it, like there's a certain degree that's like, dude, like Toyota, like wake up. Like you want to do this, you're sponsoring these people, but like there's a completely different demographic that you're missing that they could work with. But I just think that they just go towards the person who's in charge doesn't really understand the culture. They're looking at someone with a brand that's in skate shop that hits this age demographic and preference, and then they just blindly do it. Yeah. And I don't think it's necessarily about like it being culturally like accurate. I think it's just them being like, well, the numbers line up. They have enough of a spread globally to where it makes sense. Screw it. But yeah, it makes me bang a head on the table. And it's like, do you have people, I'm not going to honor myself here, but you have people like LZ. You got people like Cletus, which Cletus is now like now it's NASCAR is opening a lot more doors for more like larger corporate. But it's like, who's not doing their job, or the person who is in that seat is seeing people like myself and others like a liability because there's no one to reel them in if something, or like, what if you fully induce somebody and then tomorrow I go get a DUI and kill a cat in the making, and they're like, it's all out the window. So I try to view it heavily on the other side. But yeah, 100% of the time I'm like, you know, this is a whole nother different side discussion, is like, why would an OE not sponsor any individual YouTuber that's crushing it? Because every single YouTuber that's crushing it would love an OE partner deal. You could argue both ways, because then, you know, maybe you'd have to commit to just doing that brand and that build, which like is a fully different other question. But like, there's just so much opportunity out there that I don't feel the OEs are the last one to cave.
When was the last time you had an OE meeting?
Never.
Oh.
Ever.
If you sit in one of them, you'll understand why.
Very old people, I'm assuming, trying to call the shots.
And it's not just on the age side of it. It's just like, there's a good chance they don't even know who you are.
1,000%.
Because like they're not enthusiasts.
1,000%.
Like there's some guys who are. Shout out to guys like Tim Kaniskas and Jim Farley. But you're not meeting with those guys. You're not meeting with the heads. You're meeting with a mid-level, lower-level person who like they're in the business and they may go work at Colgate next, right? Like they're not like automotive people always. And sometimes there are, and you can see those brands.
And you see this within the other, like, you know, I have a large array of Kortner brands that I work with, whom have all, you know, it's been 5 years and growing with every single one. I don't really hop around too much.
which is good. Long term is the relationship.
100%. And you're shocked at how many, you know this, that there's like maybe one car guy in each brand.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can imagine on the OE side, it's, you know, obviously a much larger net worth of a company than, you know, the oils and the fuels and the tires and X, Y, and Z. But yeah, it just blows my mind on, there's just such smarter ways, and I always am wondering why. And I'm always like, they probably just don't know. Or the people that they do pick, they're just like, oh yeah, that works, but there's just so much more. If I was in that seat, I'd be just choosing a much different selection of people.
Yeah, I think one...
And I think we're getting there, but it's not yet.
I think there's two things. I think one is we're getting there. I was there with the fight with Ken Block. And I mean, there were moments where we would be having conversations where they're like, well, we sponsor, like our drivers need to be champions or winners. And you're like, yeah, the guy who won the race last week, like no one knows who he is, right? And it's like, so we were in the early conversations of that shift, right? Of like, there's certain protocols that are written for them where it's like the only thing is winning. Winning championships is everything.
100%.
That's not actually true when it comes to the purpose of advertising. Advertising is eyeballs. People don't always buy what wins. Sometimes people just buy what they know, right? So it's like that was a big shift. And I think you're seeing that fight with Cletus in NASCAR. Like people don't think he deserves to be there. And then there's other people who are like, well, even if he doesn't deserve to be here for whatever reason, he's good for the sport, right? And then there's the people who are like, yeah, he damn well does deserve to be there. And like you have that group. You know, a lot of it is like there's just a traditional model that's still there, and they don't know how to move that out of the way. I think in 5 years from now, I think it'll be really hard for race car drivers to find sponsorships. I think that's going to flip. I think it already is. I think right now, if you're a race car driver and you can't also be a content creator, like you're really struggling. Like the days of I'm just really, really good at what I do. If you don't have a content, because I think at the same time, I could have someone sitting across from me who is one of the fastest race car drivers in the world, but never, ever wants to talk to camera, doesn't even want to do this podcast. And they're sitting there being like, I don't understand where my world is anymore. So I think that we're in this in-between shift. And right now, the middle is the race car driver who can also make content. Levon Gittins, right?
Yeah.
Like that works well for people. We may continue to shift, and this could be a really bad day for motorsports, where actually they realize, you know what? We don't actually even need to sponsor racing. We just need to sponsor people who are going to go do cool stuff with our cars. Because at the end of the day, Gymkhana was the reason people gave Ken money. It wasn't to go race in the woods. It was Gymkhana. No one was watching us race in the woods, especially not here in America, right? Like WRC may be a little bit different, but I mean, my joke, I've said 1,000 times, apologize to everyone on the pod, but I'll say it to you, is that we ran an extremely profitable company at Hoonigan. Ken decided to spend that all on rally racing, though. And it's like, there's a reality to that. Like, if we didn't go racing rally, we would have made a lot of money. We made these things that made people sponsor him. But he had that same thing where it's like, they wanted to sponsor us because of Gymkhana, but the funding was coming from motorsport.
You got to choose where to spend it.
Eventually, the funding, there will be more and more funding for just big, cool ideas, because I do think people realize, like, that's valuable and that has work. So I think that's like one side of it. I think the other part of it is you've got like, I don't think either of us realize how big the space is. Like, I think that we are so over, like today I was like, oh, do you know Jason Camisa? And you're like, no. That is someone who is like ever present in my feed, but they're not in your feed, right? He does big view videos on YouTube. Like what
does he do?
He does like more explainer stuff and car reviews. He's like a traditional car journalist that like made the jump over. He was, you know, I think he worked at Motor Trend for a while. I forget. I think he was at Automobile for a while. I mean, I know him from like he's a bit older than me, but he now has like the most successful show on Haggerty, right? And does really well. The other day, someone said, hey, you should have Tom Refurb on the show. Do you know who he is? I never heard of him. Never heard his name before. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then I go look him up, and the kid's got 1 million+ subscribers. He's crushing content. Like, you said it before. When this started, we all knew each other. While maybe you and I didn't talk a lot, I talked with LZ, you talked to Hurt. Like, we were all interconnected. There was like 20 of us who were doing it, right? And even if it wasn't like, if I did see you, we sat down and we're like, we knew exactly who each other were.
Yeah.
The space is so big now that people hide. Like, people come out of nowhere. I mean, remember like when like Weston Champlin came out?
I was gonna say when Whistling came out.
Like Whistling, like it was like all of a sudden you're like, whoa, how does this guy have 2 million followers? And like you think he's an overnight success, but the reality is
he's been doing it for a long time.
Like it is just so saturated. And I'm happy because this is the first question I asked that you never answered, which is, as somebody who is one of the pioneers in the build side of YouTube. There's a lot of different pieces of YouTube, but the build side of YouTube, like, how do you feel about the current saturation? Like, do you see it? Like, are you even aware of like just that there's literally like thousands and thousands of people uploading build content today, right? And it's super. It like, if you just like one type of car, there's a guy who just makes that thing for you. Does that feel like it's made the space harder for you? Does it change? Like, you're obviously doing well, but like, do you think about that at all? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's definitely made the space harder. I mean, just one like thing we recently started doing is like building a whole entire car in one episode. And it's like a clear, like, I don't want to say like indication of power, but it's like, if you're starting out, it's like, good luck.
I mean, but that's also the TV model.
Yeah.
Because like TV shows need a car to be built in one episode.
1,000%. Yeah. Except we're probably doing more. I mean, I don't know. We're doing like, we'll do some of our, I mean, we think we've made like 10 or 12 of them. And we have like 7 right now in the queue to still shoot and film. We're waiting for parts, but they're like $30,000 to $40,000 in parts a car. And we'll give ourselves 5 days to shoot it. And
is it worth it for you?
Yeah, they
crush. So it's because it used to be like, oh, I could string this out over 3 weeks or a month.
I still do that. I mean, like, my model isn't necessarily, I mean, like, I think everyone's like, oh, I want my videos to do as well as possible. Yes, but like, I don't. It's always great to get more views, but that's not my largest revenue stream anymore. I think I've done a really good job of diversifying where and how it comes in, and
which is important.
And YouTube, it helps pull levers, but it doesn't rely. Like, obviously, it's the backbone. Let's say.
It's also the top of the funnel for your business.
Yeah, for sure. But like Hunt & Co is really my big focus. I see a much more larger future with Hunt & Co. Than anything else. Maybe Street Hunter. I mean, that's a different discussion, but I see a much larger future with that for what we're building and where we're trying to go. But it's on the term of YouTube. There are some things that I'll string out that just fit in my schedule, and then sometimes I'm like, this doesn't fit in the schedule. We're just gonna throw in all in one episode, and it's gonna be a banger, and it will do 10 times the views, and it will be great. And all the partners are happy because they just get more viewership in their things, and it's this awesome cohesive system. But like right now, my main focus is creating time to race, and that's where it goes down to. It's like, well, are you gonna do it? I'm like, well, I'm still like really figuring out the financials, because it's like just figuring out, okay, how much are you? You're not going to get anything back on it. We're not really getting too much other funding. But at the same time, too, like, I'm getting bored to a certain degree. And, like, I want to look forward to doing that. And it gives me something to chase. Without something to chase, it's like, what am I doing? And so that's why I have, like, the GT3 projects I keep my eyes on that I really want to do. I have a couple, like, background goals of cars that, we're going to do and I've wanted to do. But I want to have something to go after.
Yeah.
And fail at, then to try again. And drifting is something that like I'm most passionate about, and we have all the resources and tools and the program. We just have to commit the time to doing it. And then going there and winning or losing isn't necessarily the
No, doing it.
Just doing it
should be the win for you.
Is the win, just a start. And also, too, like, there's a lot to be said at in-person activations that you could probably, like, really validate through stuff with Hoonigan. So, like, that's also, like, a really big selling point for Hunt & Co. Like, there's a lot of, like, you know, domino actions that can have with, like, taking more on the road. And
I will tell you that when I was losing steam in wanting to do the company and, like, things just felt really exhausting, doing a burn yard brought it all back. Because you're like, yo, there's 6,000 people here in a small ass area. It feels like a punk rock show, and people are alive. And you're like, this is why we do this. Like, I think that we did like 6 of them before, 6 or 7 of them every month. We doing them at Irwindale right before the pandemic hit. And like, it breathed like a new life into Hoonigan.
100%.
Like, I always think like if back to the, like, if we sell the company, Kemp has, I think the biggest thing that shifted Hoonigan was COVID. Because, like, the momentum was insane.
Yeah.
The momentum was insane. And then all of a sudden, we're, like, in our house doing a live stream.
Yeah.
Like, it just changed so much. And I think because we were a bigger company, like, we had to pay more attention to it because there was 40 of us. It wasn't like, oh, 3 of us can go to the shop and just film this. It was, like, it was a lot more different. Like, it was the first momentum stopper that we had ever had. At that point, it was just like, boom, 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 boom. It just kept coming. And then all of a sudden, it was like, whoa. Like, that really felt like things slowed down. And I don't think we ever really picked up again. And not that it was COVID, but it was just like we were on fire. And then it all just stopped.
I also think, too, for a creator standpoint, like, it also depends on what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like, if I think the best everlasting plan and model is to, like, sell yourself, not sell the things that you're doing. Like, everyone that always asks, I should do this, I should do this, how do you think I should do this? I'm like, listen, the only thing that you have that I don't or any other channel already doesn't have is you.
Yeah.
Exactly. And if you can't, like, build it off of you and you're building it off of, like, buying things and, you know, using financials, like, you're going to have a harder time later down the line when you're trying to convert, because everyone's going to start a merch brand. Everyone's going to start doing all those things. And you're going to be able to actually convert much better if it's based off of your personality and your relationship with the audience rather than what you're doing. So it really depends. It's 40 times harder today. I think there's no doubting that. But there's also different avenues. Like, there's just Instagram content creators and TikTok and all these things. But, like, my mindset isn't even really so much around content making anymore as it's more like just focusing on racing and driving. I mean, that's like all.
So that's the big move for you now. Like, that's.
I don't know if it's the big move.
When I say move, I say it's the next chapter.
Maybe. Right now, I mean, we're practicing. I'm not even filming. Like, the whole entire operation and
That
team
sounds amazing.
we're not filming.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we're YouTube film stuff by day, but it's funny when you reference Ken's just taking all the profits and dumping into racing. I mean, the last I checked, I mean, it was a lot of money that, like, beyond just buying and building the car in spares and track rentals and flights and hotels and food and paying and, you know, so, like, I don't know if it's the next thing. I'm just like, man, I grew up competing in sports. That was my life. And now, for the first time, after 15 years of building this ecosystem that, like, allows me to wake up every day and be like, what do I want to do today? Do I want to not go in and just golf 36 holes, 18, and fly to wherever next weekend and go and hang out and then come back and do this? And then I got a grid life, and then I got an event, then I got a signing, then we got to do the Zumiez launch. I can just be like, I'm going to do what the fuck I want to do.
Yeah.
Right now, I'm just like, I want to just mop the fucking floor in drifting, because I have this weird mindset where, like, you can almost buy skill in motorsport, which, like, really irritates a lot of people when I say that. But, like, to a degree, you can buy. There's a certain level where you can buy skill, and then there's a certain point where it's like, okay, everyone has the same amount of money to get you that skill. Then it's more hats off.
That's why I've won so hard.
Exactly, but, like, in drifting, I believe there's a level of skill you can buy. If you can afford the car, like, if you have the same person that's been drifting for 30 days and 30 days, they've been in the same exact car, then you give one guy a pro car, give him 10 minutes to get used to it, and then give him a stock, and then give the other guy the stock Z they've been practicing in, you know. So that's where, like, my mindset comes from on that. And it's like, right now we're buying a lot of skill. I've bought the last, like, 2.5, 3 years, really 5 years. Like, I've been buying track time, buying, hey, Odie, you want to come meet me down at the track and just run doors with me? and it's buying our skill points a lot. It's like a video game. It's like when Grand Theft Auto was like putting all my money in skill. Yeah. I'm having a lot of fun doing it and progressing. And now I'm like, all right, like it's time to kind of go and show it.
Right.
Like, we've played pretend race team. We've won all these things that we can do here before just going to pro. And, you know, FD's been knocking on our door like, are you coming or not? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, I don't know. It's going to cost a lot of money and no one's going to help pay for it. We just got to have to fund it. So I'm like just deciding if I'm ready just to like write off that amount of money. So I don't know. I don't know if it's my next big move, but it's something that I'm like, this is really exciting and gives me a goal, which is really fun.
But it looks like you're still having fun.
I love what I do.
Was there ever a point where you didn't?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So that's good that you're back to where you love doing it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a win to a lot of therapy.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And I was just like, man, like, this just isn't fun. I'm taking work home, like mentally rather, and like, you know, whether
not
it's
feeling present,
like, not feeling present. I'm gone all the time.
Right. You're sitting in a room with your other friends, and all you're thinking about is like that upload or this meeting,
or like this
whatever.
Video didn't do well, or I'm trying to
10
plan
out of 10 on YouTube.
Yeah, I want to see how the Hunt and Co drop did, and there was a certain level where I had to get myself that it's like, I'm still loved by my close circle with or without anything. Yeah. And that was like a really hard thing for me to get my head around.
Yeah.
If I didn't have people, if I'm not, you know, coming up here to film this podcast and like 5 people didn't honk when they saw the asset and waved, like I'm still just as valuable with or without that. Yeah. And that was a hard thing for me to get my head around.
But you've also built a transferable audience, right? Like you built an audience that likes you for what you do.
I hope so.
And even when you change things, they may not all come.
Yeah.
Because there's some that may be there for a particular thing that you do. And they're like, oh, I'm only here for builds. You're not doing builds anymore. That's it. I'm only here for the GT3 thing.
Yeah.
But like you'll always keep a certain piece that moves with you.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. And that's, you know, and I just love to help people. I love like my biggest like mantra that I was trying to like do throughout this whole entire journey was like, I'm going to get as far as I can to the top and I'm going to show you guys every single chess move. Yeah. Probably to a degree, I've almost like shared too much transparency within personal life and things of that nature.
Yep.
But I love when I go and do meet and greets, I'm standing in line for 8 hours and every single person comes to me with like their big existential life question.
Right.
And I love it.
Yeah.
And I'm so quickly able to like strip down all their reasons and be like, here's the question. You're not asking correctly. Yep. Here's the answer. If you don't have the answer, that's when you figure out, then come back to me. Like I'm so easy to like to strip out all the bullshit. Be like, here's what you need to hear. I love being able to help everybody. It's cool.
I think that there's like, you know, a certain valuable piece there. And I sort of stayed away from that initially. Like I wanted to just be like, oh, this is what I do. I'll stay in this lane. This is my lane. It's one of the reasons why I don't really mind that we barely talked about cars today. There's an audience that'll enjoy this. But because my own like mental health and everything, you know, after Hoonigan, after Ken's death and everything became a thing I had to deal with. Like it wasn't something I couldn't not deal with anymore. Right. I've been more open talking about that. And it's interesting because we could have like a great episode and have all these great comments and whatever. And like, I always will get feedback and there will always be people who DM me who will be like, you know, you shouldn't have picked this car because of this, or, oh, I totally agree with you here on like just superficial stuff. Anytime that I mention something around, you know, struggling with ADHD and how difficult it's been and how being undiagnosed for 40 some odd years and how it's like a lot different than like what people think it is and like, or even what the internet says it is and the ups and downs of it. That's when I get like the long paragraph text and DMs like, dude, this meant so much. And it's like, I realize that there's a part of the audience that doesn't suffer from that, doesn't deal with it, and probably doesn't want to hear it. Yeah. But like, man, the few that do, that perk up, you're like, all right, it's worth it. It's like, it's valuable for them to like hear that stuff. So I think sometimes while you may feel like you overshare and there's like this weird world of like parasocial relationships with people and how they feel like they know you through that. Like, I don't know, man, the few times that like it matters to somebody, like, I think it has like a pretty positive. No, it has a pretty positive effect.
It definitely outweighs whatever negative. And not that the only negative is just like, you know, kind of feeling like you don't have any privacy. Yeah. You know, it's like a big, like me and Sabrina like aren't doing this big wedding. We're just like me and her courthouse,
Yeah.
knocking it out. I just don't want the world. I've shared. There's a certain aspect. So I'm like, I've shared enough.
Yeah.
With the world, I just want something.
And you need that. You need like
me.
that safe place.
Yeah. So
you don't have that.
I love, sharing, all of like my like issues and things that I've gotten around or how I improved it to help others. Like that's like, I love, if someone asks me for help, I'll sit there and talk for an hour. They have to stop me because I'll just like, I'm like, what else? Like, what else you got? Like, come on, like, let me help you like break this down. Like I can help you tackle this. But, yeah. And I think that's the key to creating a successful channel today is like sell yourself, not what you can buy.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the next rich guy is going to come in
and just outbuy you.
The Hamilton collection's coming back, or Ron Supercar, or DDE, or Manny Koshbin's going to buy a more expensive Bugatti than you. And you end up just like getting in this rat. It's just focus on you. And when those things come in, cool. But
or focus on the things that are your skill.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like for me, it's like I like telling stories. Just a better story told is what's valuable for me, right? Like that's your skill set versus the things you own, right? All right, sir. I think we have now hit probably what is the longest pod. Yeah, we got the thumbs up. So you just set the record setting. Nice work. Congratulations.
I won.
You won, which I know you came here to win. So you now can go home triumphantly in traffic that you won.
My phone is blowing. I probably got like 80 texts.
Yeah.
I'm scared to look at it.
Okay. I'm going to hit you with one last question, but since you turned it around on me and you brought a lot of questions to me today, do you have any final questions that you need answered that I can answer in like under a few minutes? You got anything? Otherwise, I'll go into my last question.
Yeah, I do. How much money are you guys getting for each Gymkhana?
just bleep this.
That's what I want
I'll
to
tell
know.
you that off camera.
Okay.
I'll tell you that off camera.
That's what I really want to know. But okay, no, I'm ready for your question.
Okay. All right. So, obviously the racing thing is what you want to do next, right?
Yeah.
Maybe that's something right? I always kind of like to do this whenever somebody's on who we have more of a business conversation. I always like to flip the end one of like, okay, so cool. So if you and I were to go do a project together, what would you want to do?
Like project meaning what?
Whatever.
I want to make my own Gymkhana with you directing it.
There you go.
I've wanted to do that for a long time. I've thought about pitching it, not with you, but like I
would be insulted if you didn't ask me.
No. Well, this is like years ago, but there's been so many times where I'm like, I've watched Gymkhana and I've watched other people like try to do it, and I'm like, I've literally looked at shutting down certain streets. I've looked at buying out like a parking garage for a night.
Can I tell you that I have an entire scout of San Diego that I did, but San Diego didn't give us the rights to. They said no, and we went to Australia instead. So I've already got a bunch of really good stuff figured out. So
like locations and stuff.
Yeah, like really cool, unique because like you need a good base of like unique locations that you just can't find that elsewhere. And then you need good driving.
How much do you need for budget?
We'll get to that after. We'll get that after we wrap.
Let's
talk.
I like literally went down like I got people that are willing to spend some ched.
Yeah, I also have people who will fund something like that, so we can figure it out. Let's talk.
I don't know if you're being serious, but
I'm not.
I wanted to. I'm like, dude, I want to do one of these videos. I might not be as good as Ken did, but.
And that may be your road into an automaker.
All right. Well, thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming on. Thanks for the questions. Thanks for the answers. This was really enjoyable. We should definitely try to spend more time hanging out, considering that we now realize we were only about 30 minutes apart from each other at my other home. So yeah,
big flex.
Farm flex.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks, dude.
Thank you.
The mailbox is full. The mailbox is full. The mailbox is full and cannot accept any messages at this time. Goodbye.
Of all the sunglass companies out there, you might ask, why Heatwave? Aside from them being friends of mine, they just make great shades. Awesome styles, cool collabs, smart tech. They even have extra large sizes for big heads like me. And for those of you wearing this on the job, They make ANSI Z87 spec safety glasses too. But what really attracts me to Heatwave is that they are physically a part of our culture. You will find them everywhere, from King of the Hammers to Formula Drift. You'll see everyone wearing Heatwaves at your local track day event. Damn, you might even turn laps with the co-founder Justin, because they're one of us. So, one more reason to choose Heatwave Visual to fix your face. I'm a tool dork. My obsession might even dwarf my addiction to cars. I love collecting unique and specialty tools, which is how I initially fell in love with Wera. First off, they just make aesthetically pleasing tools. They feel good in your hand, they have a great finish, their sizes are universally color-coded, and they are super strong. In 2 decades, I've never broken a tool from Wera. I wish I could say the same about my other tools. But the thing I like the most about Wera is that they create clever solutions for your wrenching woes, because you need over-engineered tools to work on today's over-engineered cars. So if you're ready to step up your tool game, whether it's the Zyklop ratchet or the Joker wrenches, find them at weratools.com. All anyone wants to talk about nowadays is how great 90s car culture was. But what everyone forgets is how bad our slammed cars rode on crappy lowering springs. At the time, that's all my wallet could muster. But when I finally did step up and get some proper coilovers, I went for KWs and never looked back. I've been running their stuff for over 2 decades now, in everything from my 911 to my RS2. I even have a custom set in my Land Rover Discovery. And yes, that bloody thing does finally run. Anyway, because of my long history with them, I am very excited to announce KW as the newest partner in this whole podcast syndicate thing I'm building. Anyway, check them out, kwsuspensions.com.